I'm here with my friend Lego, and we're going to have a debate on three topics. Those topics being the legalization of drugs. The second topic is going to be prostitution or sex work in general. Uh, and then the third one is the abolition of intellectual property, or whether or not that's a good idea or not, whether we should do that or not. So we're going to have a debate on that. So,
Which of the three would you like to start with?
yeah, we could start on the drugs first if you like.
All right, I would say that in general, certain drugs I don't have a problem with. There are certain drugs I would have a problem with being legalized, like meth, heroin, the really exceptionally addictive and destructive drugs. Drugs other than those, like marijuana or even mushrooms, perhaps even like acid or LSD, I don't have a personal issue with. But if society decided that they would rather those drugs be prohibited, then the burden would be on us to sort of respect that decision of society.
All right, is that your opening on that issue? Okay.
On that issue, and really for prostitution and IP too,
Hmm.
I mean, that's going to be my general position across the board.
Well, my general position, I guess I have two positions, which is going to be the self ownership position, as which is that you own your body, so that means you get to believe that you have the right to put into your body and do with your body whatever you want, so long as you're not violating the consent of any other individual. Um, and not only that, but putting the whole self ownership thing aside. I just feel like we'll be better off not prohibiting drugs. I feel like us prohibiting drugs has caused a lot more issues than it has solved. So, for example, we've been doing nothing but spending more. The United States government, for example, we've been spending billions and billions of money, and the amount of money that is we've been spending on this drug war has been going up each year, and the amount of people who are addicted to drugs has stayed the same, if not increased. And the drugs, the harder the substances that are out there are even harder than they were before. So to me, it seems like this drug war, despite the fact that we're spending all this money, isn't really making an effect on the amount what people are doing. But I'll put that aside. I feel like if you're on your own private property and you're not violating anybody else's rights, and you're doing it in a responsible way that's not harming anybody, I can't see any reason why you should get arrested or harmed or someone should stop you from taking drugs. I mean, even the hard substances. So, like I said, it's one thing if you're going out and attacking somebody or getting into a car and driving and wrecking somebody, where somebody else's consent or their bodily their body is being harmed. But to me, it seems to me to be a victimless crime to to do drugs, especially if you're on your own private property. And I don't think it's right to arrest people for victimless crimes, just simply.
So two things there would be that one, you said that we shouldn't. So I imagine when you say we should not prohibit the use of drugs, you're saying like there's some sort of like moral obligation not to ban it, and it seems like you're couching that in self ownership. So we can go into that part too. But as far as whether or not it's your property or I don't consider your body to be a thing you own, but I can go with the language of your body. It is the body that is a part of you. So
Do
regardless
you
of it
mind if
being
I
your body.
do you mind if I clarify what I mean by self ownership or body ownership?
Well, just real quick,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, in just a second though.
Hmm.
So I would just say that if the society determines that they don't want people doing meth in their society, then that is the rule, and there is. I would say there is no violation of rights for them to do that. There's no moral wrong being committed by them making that decision. But maybe when you clarify self-ownership, it'll
Oh,
make
yeah, yeah.
the issue more clear.
So to clarify on the self-ownership, I really mean body ownership. Like you are the owner of your body. Your body is a scarce resource that can be used by others. And the right to ownership is the right to control a scarce resource. And control is basically the right to exclude. That means that you have the right to exclude other people or use or exclude that thing. So that would mean like if you're standing next to me, Lego, and I touched your shoulder and you said, "Hey, Sithis, please don't touch my shoulder," you would have the right to exclude me from your body, because you own your body. Nobody else is allowed to, use it without your consent. And also, uh, to me, if you're not violating anybody's rights, for anyone to stop you from using a drug, they would be initiating an aggression against you because you may not like it that somebody else is doing meth. You might think that it's distasteful. Like, yeah, I would agree that smoking meth is probably not a good idea. Well, not probably, but actually not a good idea. But I would say that if to stop them, you would have to initiate an aggression on them. That's the only way that you could do so.
When you say that there's a right to exclude use of your body because you own it, what is the argument for you owning your body?
Oh, like I said, your body is a scarce resource. So ownership is the right to control the scarce resource, like I said. And like I said earlier, like control is the right to exclude or use or exclude other people from that property, but mainly to exclude you from that property, because you could use your property so long as you're not violating another person's right. So I can move around, jump around, put drugs into my body, so long as I'm not violating the consent of another person's body, because they own their body. So then by using their body by their consent, I would be claiming ownership over their body. And to be claiming ownership over another person's body is slavery, and we don't support that. And that's also a violation of property rights.
So are you saying that you own your body because you do have the right to exclude use of your body? Like because you have exclusive use of your body, that is why you own it?
Well, you have the right to exclude others from it if you have not initiated an aggression. If you're not harming anybody and you're not violating another person's consent, there's no reason why another person should be allowed to use your body without your consent.
Well, you're saying that they can't use your body.
Well, they
And
could
I'm not
use
saying
your
that people
body.
should.
I'm saying, like, I don't believe they should be allowed to use your body because I believe in self-ownership. It's a principle.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'll change my language there a little bit. So you would say that people shouldn't be allowed to use your body because you own it.
Mhm.
But are you also saying that you own your body because no one else should be allowed to use it because it's
No,
yours?
because it's a scarce resource, and you are the just if you are to be, because you own your body and you are in control of your body, and you cannot detach yourself from your body. It's literally impossible. You are your body. The only person
You are your body.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So the only person that could possibly have claim over that scarce resource is the one that's controlling it, the person who inhabits it, which is you. And for another person to come in and use your body without your consent, they would be claiming ownership over your body. And I don't think it's right for another person to claim ownership over your body. That's another form of slavery, essentially. Especially when you
So
have
would you
not
say that
initiated an
you?
aggression. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I thought you
No,
were.
that's it. I was just gonna say if you have not initiated an aggression.
Well, it kind of seems like you're saying that you have the right to control your body because you own it, but you own it because you
No,
have
no,
the
no.
right
The
to
other way
control it,
around.
or because you control it.
The other way
But it
around.
seems well then okay. So your
Ownership
body,
is
you
the
own it
right to
because your
control.
body. Right, but
Mhm.
you own your body. The argument for you owning your body is that it's scarce, which on its own wouldn't make you the owner, but it's scarce and you control it.
Mhm.
That
So
seems to be the
yeah,
argument for you owning it.
You are the person that you are able to. You're the one that well, because you're physically actually controlling it, and you can't detach yourself from it. You no other. You are the first comer to your body, I suppose. So so because of that, any second comer to your body, any other person that would come to grab or use your body without your consent, they would be violating your rights.
Your right of ownership.
Yeah, of your own body, because your body is a scarce resource. two people can't use the same scarce resource at the same time. For instance, like if we have a watch, I can't use to wear that watch at the same time as you wear that watch. So if we have a conflict over that thing, the owner is going to be the person who wins out in that situation. The person who is got that thing from being the first comer or through voluntary transaction. And that's the only really way you can come through upon property. Unless, of course, well, that's not the only way. You can steal something from someone, but that would be initiating an aggression, and we don't support that. Libertarians.
Okay, well, so kind of pulling it back to the drug point then.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of whether, because you already know I disagree with the idea that you own your body. I would just say you are, your body is just a part of who you are rather than it being a thing you own. So it's not, in my mind, it's not a question of can I do with my property what I like. And even if that was the question, well, no, you're not allowed to just do with your property what you like. I don't think there is a right to just do with your property as you like.
But you are, with your property, you have the right to exclude other people from your property.
Depending on the property, I would say I don't consider your body to be property, but I do think that I do believe there's a right to exclude other people.
You have the right to exclude other people from your body, right?
Yeah, but not in a property sense, not because it's property.
Well, the right, that's what I mean by ownership. Ownership and control is the right to control, and control is, well, to be able to have the final say over it, to be able to exclude other people from that thing. And yeah, I believe people have the right to exclude others from their body. I don't think anyone has the right to use it. And it seems you are in agreement with me on that fact.
I agree that other people can't use your body. I don't agree that that makes your body property, but that's a little beside the point, because I would say that regardless of whether the body is property or not, even if it is or isn't, that doesn't give you a right to just do with it as you please. Like it does, like if I own a gun, I can't just go outside and start shooting, randomly.
Yeah,
I can't.
That's why I said you have the right to exclude. But the thing, and that's why I said earlier, you have the right to use it so long as you're not initiating an aggression. So, if you can own a gun, like he said, but if you went to go and shoot somebody, that would be initiating an aggression. That person has not aggressed upon you, so therefore you have no right to use their body without their consent, which would be shooting them.
Sure, but even if you're not going out to shoot somebody, like let's say like firework laws, where you're not allowed to go and just start doing fireworks because it might start a fire. Would you say that there's a problem there? Like, oh no, if they're not directly
if you're on your
aggressive.
own property and you're shooting fireworks and nobody is harmed as a result of that action, I can't see why you should not be allowed to use fireworks.
Well, because it could start a fire, which would spread to other people's property.
Yeah, but you could hold someone responsible if they do that.
Yeah, but we could also prohibit them from doing it, right?
Yeah, but there are plenty of people who use fireworks without harming other people. Like you could use fireworks without setting on fire other people's houses.
You could, yeah, but is there something wrong, like morally wrong about prohibiting the use of fireworks in the case of
if you're not harming
risk?
Anybody, yeah, because the only way to stop that person from using the firework on their own property is to initiate aggression against them.
Right. I wouldn't say it's aggression. I wouldn't consider it aggression to.
You're
basically enforce the law. But
you're having a dispute over scarce means.
Yeah, I don't consider that an aggression. But I would just say that if the person is putting other people at risk and society does not want to allow this risk, why ought society? Why?
He's on his own
why is
property
it wrong?
And he's not harming anyone. It's one thing if he was pointing it at somebody and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna shoot this firework at you," then that would be like a threat. But if you're just using it recreationally on your own property, yeah, I can't see why you should stop that person. I mean,
well, the reason is because it puts other people at risk that they don't have a moral obligation to accept. I don't see any moral obligation to accept this risk. And if that society
they don't have to
decides
live next to him if they don't want to be near someone who does fireworks.
I'm not arguing that they have to live next to him. I'm arguing that there is no burden on society to accept this risk, and if society decides not to accept this risk, and then decides to prohibit the use of the fireworks or drugs or whatnot, they're within their rights, their right to self-govern. And if that guy doesn't like it, he could leave. He doesn't want to live in a society that
Wait a
doesn't
minute,
allow.
but he owns his house. He has ownership over his house, right?
So do his neighbors.
Yeah, but he's not violating their rights in any way. All he's doing is lighting off fireworks.
Well, I would say he is. I would say he is violating
So
their
what
rights.
aggression has he initiated by lighting off some fireworks?
He is violating their right to self-govern.
Self-govern? They're still able to self-govern themselves.
Well, no, not if he doesn't have to follow the rules. You're saying that they don't have the right to self-govern. They can't make these rules.
Self-govern is governing yourself. You're saying that what you're advocating for is other governing. That's governing someone else. That is not yourself. That's not self-governing.
Well, no, self-governance in the sense of a society self-governing, like a group of people coming together to arrive at rules and regulations. Well, that is self-governing.
Well, no, because you're not governing yourself. You're governing another person.
Well, yeah, okay, but that self-governance doesn't just mean you telling yourself what to do. It can also be a group of people
within the area what to do.
Yeah, that's also falls under self-governance when we're talking about a society.
I don't really agree with self-governance if you're not in that way. It's one thing if you went to him and say, "Hey, I don't like it if you, light off fireworks. I don't like that," and you try to convince him. But it's his property. He owns it. If he were to do something that harms another person, you could still hold him responsible for that action. But like the whole idea that we're just going to arrest somebody preemptively for fighting off fireworks because of the chance that they might harm somebody, I feel like you could use that argument for pretty much anything. For a lot of things.
No, because it's not preemptive. He has committed the crime at that point. If he's shooting off the fireworks, it's no longer preemptive.
He's on his own property. He hasn't violated anyone's consent.
Well, we're assuming that there is a law against shooting off the fireworks in this hypothetical. So he has broken the law there. He has committed the crime.
He may have broken your state's law, but to me, if he hasn't violated anyone's consent, if he hasn't harmed anyone, he hasn't done anything wrong.
Right. Well, I get that. I get that that's your position, but I think if we give you like a situation where someone is pointing a gun at you in public, even though they haven't harmed you,
they're making a
that
threat
doesn't mean you have
you.
to. Right. Exactly. There's a threat there, and that presence of a threat is enough to respond.
Yeah, you can stop that person. So I can
stop this guy who's...
Yeah, because you don't have an obligation to... Sorry, I was just going to say, you don't have an obligation to submit to anyone if they point a weapon at you.
Right. We don't have an obligation to allow others to put us at a risk that society has decided is we have no obligation to accept that risk.
But that's a little bit different. I mean, like I said earlier, it's one thing if the person is taking the firework and pointing it at somebody and doing it in a way where they're going to harm somebody. That's a different thing because they're going to violate someone's consent. But if you're doing it recreationally is you're just shooting fireworks in the air because you like the way it looks. Oh, it's pretty. They're not threatening anybody. That's not the same.
Well, we can adjust the hypothetical pretty easily. Let's say you're in a densely populated area and a guy decides to set up a target within this densely populated area and he's going to shoot at it. He's not threatening anybody.
Does he own the land in which he's shooting the firework on?
Sure, yeah. We'll say he has like...
are the people who are living there, who are there consensually staying there?
Are they... what do you mean, are they consensually staying there?
Are they there through their own volition?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so...
For sure.
I mean, listen, if you harm another person... obviously.
Well, no, the question isn't. The question isn't.
Wait, shooting the fireworks.
Wait.
No, I was going to answer.
No. Well, no, you haven't let me. No, wait, you haven't let me finish asking the question. You cut me off midway through the question, and
I thought you were gonna. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so the question is: assuming the guy's in a densely populated area, he's on his property, set up a target, he's shooting, but other people are being put at risk because this guy is in this densely populated area shooting. Does the society not have any authority to go, hey man, you can't be out here
Is he
blasting off
threatening
your gun,
anyone?
even though no, he's not. But he's putting it. He's not
Are
verbally
the
threatening. Like he's
Yeah,
not
yeah. Are the people
intentionally
there
trying
through
to
their
harm.
own volition? Are they like they choosing to be there?
Yeah, they are. Well, they're on their property. They're not on his property. And this guy
How could they be in a
is just
densely
firing off his
populated?
gun.
How can it be densely populated if he's on their? You said it was a densely populated area. Like what? Like I would
Yeah.
assume that maybe they're having like a party at his house and he's shooting off some
No, no, no.
fireworks.
I'm talking about like I'm saying like let's say he's in a trailer park where you have tiny little lots, and
Mm-hmm.
he's not shooting fireworks anymore. He's shooting his AK-47 at a target he set up on his yard. So he's posing a threat. He's not threatening anyone like overtly, but he
Mm-hmm.
is posing a threat. He is creating immense risk for all the other people around his property. Why would these people not have
Wait,
the
is he
right
on
to
his
say,
own
"Hey, man, you
property?
can't do that"? Yeah, he is.
Is he harming anyone?
He certainly could. Why should they allow
Yeah, but
him
you could say
to?
that about anything. You could say that, like, for instance, if let's say I'm at a gun range and there's like a booth next to me and someone's shooting next to me. You could make that same argument. Oh, we should ban gun booths because somebody next to you might drop their gun and accidentally shoot you. Well, it's just like if the people on who own that property are okay with taking on that risk, if the people who are around there who are on his property none of them are being rights are being violated, nobody else's rights is being violated, then I don't see anything wrong with somebody shooting off some rounds on their own property.
Okay, so you'd be okay with people shooting their AK-47s within a densely populated trailer park
Yeah, as long
with
as they're
no
not
extra
harming
precautions
anybody, there's
taken?
nothing wrong with shooting your gun at some targets. I mean, people do that all the time.
Okay. Okay,
I
so
mean,
let's say
that's
we're
like
talking about
a
public property. If we're talking about public property, does that somehow make it not okay?
I don't believe in public property.
Okay, so let's say he's in an area that's within modern society considered public property. Is
If
it okay then?
if he's in an area that isn't owned by him and the person who owns it doesn't consent to it, then no, yeah, he's not allowed to shoot the gun.
Well, you don't believe in public property, so according to you, nobody owns this public property, right?
Yeah.
So would he
Well,
be okay with
yeah, but
shooting his gun there?
whoever somebody owns it, whoever owns it is the person who's controlling it. Well, but they or no,
Well, the
not the person
government
who's no,
controls
not the
it,
person
so
who's controlling it. The person somebody owned it. It was just taken away from them by the government, and now they control it. They're not the owners. They're thieves. They're the criminal org.
okay. Well, there's no owner telling this guy not to shoot his AK-47. There's just the government telling him not to do it. Is he okay to go and shoot his AK-47 on this quote unquote public property?
I don't see any issue with it. It's not owned by anyone, right?
Okay. So what if he wanted to lob grenades into this area of public property?
Is he harming anyone?
He certainly could. He hasn't yet. He's on his way to go do it, and we're deciding should we stop
I
him?
mean, if you throw a
So,
grenade and that thing blows up and he harms somebody in that process, then yeah, like absolutely he should be, there should be some restitution there.
well, I'm not asking if we can punish him for harming people. I'm asking, can we stop him from going to this densely populated public area and
Yeah,
lobbing grenades?
absolutely, because that would be uh basically a threat. He's not on his own property. Um, so
Whoa,
it's
why
like
is it a
tossing
threat?
it's like a because you're tossing a grenade. A grenade is an explosive that's meant to kill people.
Okay, so shooting AK-47 in densely populated area,
Well,
not a threat,
earlier you
but
said
throwing a grenade is.
But the earlier example, let's not forget the earlier example you gave was the person was on his own private property, and the example
Well,
you're
we
giving
already moved
now
from that though.
is
We
that
moved. No, no,
yeah, the example you're
not the
giving
one I'm
now
giving
is that
now.
the
We already
person is
moved.
not on their property. That's
No,
two
you
different
conceded that.
situations.
No, it's not two different
It is
situations
two different
because you agreed.
situations.
No, it's not because I already said if he's
One
on the
person's on
public
his
property.
property, the other
No,
person's
no,
not.
no, no. I said if he's on the public property shooting the AK-47, would that be fine? And you said yes on the public property. And I said,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
well, what if it's a
Is he?
grenade?
Is he? Well, you didn't add the densely populated part in that public property part in the beginning.
Okay, so it's densely populated
But
on public property, and he's shooting his AK-47. Is it
yeah.
okay?
Well, a lot of people there might be consider that to be a threat because like you're shooting things off in the air.
Oh, so if people consider it a threat, if they consider
Well,
it
they could
threatening or
stop
posing
you.
them risk,
Yeah,
Oh,
they could
okay.
stop you from shooting rounds around them. It's
Okay,
one
so
thing
why
if
can
you're.
they
It's
stop
one
them?
thing if you're on your property, then they wouldn't have a right to stop you as long as you're not initiating aggression. But if you're not on your property and you're just shooting off rounds anywhere, yeah, other people might consider that to be a threat and could stop you from doing that because you might hurt
So,
somebody.
so if you're threatening people from your own property, it's okay?
No, I've never said that.
We just said doing the exact same action, but if you're within your property doing the exact same thing, posing the exact same risk,
Well, there's
it's
no
not
risk
a,
there
or it is okay.
because you're
But
on
there
your
is
own.
risk.
Well, I mean, it's not a. I meant to say it's not a threat because he's on his own property. He's doing it recreationally. Whereas, when
Well,
you're in public, it's not the same. Like you can't always determine whether or not that person is shooting his gun justly or not justly. Whereas if he's on his own property, well, you could be like, oh, well, he's on his property. He's just shooting his gun. Wherever you're in
yeah,
public,
but if he's,
you don't really
we're talking
know
about a
that.
small piece of property. We don't know that in public or when he's on his property. The risk being posed, the
Well,
threat
if
he's
he's on his
posing to other people.
property, yeah, I don't see any issue with that. But there's a difference between like when you're not on your own property, because like you could very much harm somebody. Like if you're in a densely populated area, no, I don't think you should just shoot your gun off. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so you're saying that because he could harm people in that densely populated area, that's what makes it okay to stop him?
Yeah, because
Because
because if those people don't want to get harmed by him shooting his gun off, they can stop him.
okay, so if people don't want to be harmed by the actions you're doing, which pose significant
Yeah, but
risk of
that's why
harm
I
to
said in the
them, it's
beginning.
okay to stop them.
Yeah, but that's why I said in the beginning, I clarified and I said this from the beginning, which is that if you are on your own property and you're doing drugs and you're not violating anyone's consent, I can't see any reason why anyone should stop you from doing that. That's the whole argument I made from the beginning.
We've already acknowledged the reason. You've acknowledged that the risk you're posing to other people gives them some
No,
authority
the
to stop
difference
you.
is when you're on your own property and you're not on your own property. That's the difference. You're not
Well, you
acknowledging
have
that.
to. Well, no, I'm acknowledging that. I'm just first acknowledging that you do recognize that posing risk to other people and in at least some circumstances does give people a right to stop you. Now we
Yeah,
have to talk about.
but
Okay, so now we have to talk
the
about.
difference is you're on your own property, and the other one is you're not on your property.
Right. So why does
So,
that make the difference?
well, because you're allowed to do what you want on your own property, and if the person doesn't like it, they could leave. You have the
They're
right
on
to
their
leave,
property.
but there's a
You're posing
difference.
the risk to them while they're on their property. You're on yours and they're on theirs.
Are you on your own property shooting the gun?
Yeah, and they're on their own property, but
Yeah,
you're
so then they
posing a
can't
risk to
stop you.
them.
They can't stop you from shooting a gun on your own property if you're not harming anyone,
Why not?
because you're not harming anyone.
But you're posing a significant risk to them. So why can't
Are
they
you
stop?
shooting at their house?
Not deliberately, but it's a
I mean, it's one
possibility
thing
that a
if you're
bullet
shooting
does
at
go
their
into their house.
house. It's one thing if
It's a possibility.
are they
It's a
shooting a
possibility
target
that a bullet.
that's like a bulletproof
Yeah,
target?
but it's well, no, they're not taking any extra precautions. They just
So
have
they're
a
just shooting
target.
in
If
the
they
air, or
no, they're shooting at a target. But if they miss, it's going to go into someone
yeah,
else's
and if
house.
they miss and it goes into someone's house and it hits someone, then they should be charged. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I'm not. Again, I'm not asking. And I've already pointed this out multiple times.
I've
So I don't know
answered
why.
your
I'm not
question already.
asking. Wait. I'm not asking if we can punish them if they harm someone. I'm asking about
No,
whether we can stop them from
no.
shooting at the
The
target.
answer is no.
Wait, why not?
I
Why
told you
not?
because they're on their own property. I've explained it so
Why
many
does that
times.
make the difference? I'm
Because
asking why that makes the difference.
obviously there's a different level of threat when you're on your own property than when you're not on your own property. When you're on your own property, you're allowed to do whatever you want on your own property, so long as you're not violating another person's consent. But it's different when you're not on your own property. You can't just do whatever you want when you're not on your own property. Whoever
kind of
owns
begging
the
the
other
question.
person, whoever owns that property, then they would be able to tell you what you want. So, for instance, if I walk up to your house with an AR-15, you could tell me, "Hey, Sithis, don't bring that gun in here," and you would have that right to say so. And because if I don't like it, I could just leave.
You're begging the question, though. I'm asking why can they not stop him when he's on his property? And your
I just
response is
answered the
because he can do.
question.
Right, you're begging the question with your answer, though, because your answer is because he can do whatever he wants on his property.
Yeah, because
I'm
he owns
asking
it.
why. Right, I'm asking
Yeah.
why that makes the difference, and you're going,
Yeah,
and you're
because he
basically saying
owns the
because it
property.
does. Okay,
Just
why
answer
does
the
that make the
question.
difference? No.
Because
My
he owns
question
the
is why
property.
that makes. My question is why that makes the difference.
Because when you own something, you have the right to control that scarce resource, and you're allowed to do with it whatever you want. You're allowed to exclude other people from it.
You're still
So
begging the question. I'm
I'm
asking you why owning the property gives you the right to do whatever you want with it, and you're saying because you
because
own it. And I go, well, why does that matter? Because you have the right to do whatever you want with it. I'm saying why? Because you own it. Why does that give you the right to do whatever you want with
I
it?
believe in property rights. I believe that scarce resources, the best way to allocate scarce resources is through property rights.
Okay, but why does that give you the right to do whatever you want on your property?
Because if you aren't violating any other consent, I can't see any reason why anyone should stop you.
Well, you have acknowledged the reason because you're posing significant risk to other people. So I'm asking why you're owning the property is the difference maker there.
I've already
Because you are
explained it,
posing.
because you're allowed to do what you want with your property.
Okay, that's what I'm asking why
Because you
that
own
is
it.
the case.
The ownership is the right to control a scarce
Okay.
resource.
You say, let me just break this down for you real quick. You're saying you have the right to do whatever you want on the property you own. And I go, why? And you go, you own it. And I go, okay, why does you owning it give you the right to do whatever you want?
It
Because
depends.
you own it. I'm like, okay, but why does
because
that?
there's two. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's two ways which you could come upon property, which is voluntary transaction or through homesteading. If you got your the only way that someone can take your property or claim ownership over that property is by initiating an aggression, by violating your consent. And we don't think it's right to violate another person's consent. So that's why we believe those two ways are the only just ways in which you come across property. If that person owns that property, if they come upon it through homesteading or through voluntary transaction, to stop that person from doing what they want on their property, you would have to violate their consent.
We would violate. Yeah, I think we have the authority to violate their consent.
Yeah, and we don't. And as a libertarian, I don't think it's right to violate people's consent. We don't think that's right. We believe.
Well, you do think it's right if when they're on public property, it's fine to violate their consent, right? So you're okay with violating consent, just not on
when you have
their
not
own private
initiated
property.
an aggression. Because
okay, so when they're in the public
threat,
posing a risk, it's okay.
It's because
violate their consent.
Well, because you're not on your property, you can't just shoot off rounds around in a densely populated. People could
right. And I'm asking why being on your property makes the difference. And don't just say because you own it. They do consider it a threat. It is a threat. If you're on your property and you miss your small target and it's going to kill my family.
But are you threatening somebody by shooting guns on your property?
Here, I'll give it to you this way. If you're on your property and you're shooting at a 1-by-1 target, and if you miss, it's going to kill my family. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come out and I'm probably going to point a gun at you and I'm going to tell you to stop. And if you don't stop, I'm going to kill you. That's what's going to happen. So tell me why would I just... Yeah, they are posing a threat to me and my family.
No,
if they miss their target...
Are they going to shoot you? Are they going to shoot?
They're not threatening to shoot me deliberately, no. But if they miss their target, they are going to kill my family. I'm going to kill that person. So what have I done wrong?
Well, then you could make an argument that they were posing a threat to you.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but that's not the same situation. Like you're talking
it is.
about.
It's literally
But you're talking about.
situation.
You're talking about a situation where someone's deliberate, like actually has a gun and they're pointing it and they are able to shoot somebody. I'm talking about just in general, somebody shooting a gun on their property.
I'm saying someone's on their property shooting at a 1-by-1 target. If they miss, they will hit.
Kill somebody.
And if they miss,
you could consider that to be a threat.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah, then you could stop that because then they're basically putting you that you could consider that to be a threat because they're pointing their gun at you. Now it's one thing if you...
No, they're not pointing a gun at me. They're pointing it at the target. But if they miss, in order to shoot if they make an error,
have to be pointing a gun at you.
Well, they can be pointing at people. People are not always very good at shooting guns. They can.
We both agree
they can be
that
aiming.
In order for you to shoot somebody, you have to be pointing the gun at them, right?
The gun has to be pointed in their direction. They don't have to be aiming at you. If you're pointing a
gun in someone's direction, I'm sure me and you can consider that to be a threat.
Exactly.
And if
exactly.
You're not
so if
on
you're on
that
your
person's,
property,
are you on that person's property?
No, I'm on my property.
Are you threatening?
I'm going to come onto their property.
Are you threatening that
I am
person?
now. I am now because there's
before they went before that confrontation when they were pointing that gun at you. Did you threaten them in any way?
Nope.
Okay, so then they're threatening you. Then you have the right to stop them.
Okay, so the risk they're posing to those around them justifies me coming onto their property and forcing them to stop
No,
and even
no.
killing them.
Pointing a gun at
What do
you.
you mean, no?
Hold on. Him pointing a gun at you is what I believe you could consider to be posing a threat at you. And if you
Well, no, he's not pointing a gun at me.
he is pointing a gun at you.
He's not
He's going to shoot you, right?
No,
Is he
no,
pointing
he's
a
not
gun
going
at
to
your
shoot
family
me.
member?
He's pointing a gun at the target, but if he misses or makes a mistake,
So then he's
it would
pointing the
kill
gun
my
at you.
family member.
Yeah, then he is pointing a gun at you.
No, he's not currently pointing the gun at me. No.
How do you shoot?
He's not pointing a gun at me.
How do you shoot somebody without pointing a gun at them?
Okay, you realize that someone could be not pointing a gun at you, and then later on, like temporally, they could at some point make a mistake and be pointing the gun at you and shoot you. You realize that's a possibility. Like that happens, right?
Yes, that does happen.
You acknowledge that?
Person does,
okay, right.
If that person shoots you or starts
We're not talking about whether you can punish them. We're not talking about whether you can punish them for shooting you.
Don't interrupt me.
Okay. Okay.
Because I'm trying my best not to interrupt you, so I want you to allow to not interrupt me. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So if that person is pointing a gun at you, or is shooting his gun and he's doing it so recklessly that he's about to shoot you, well then yeah, you have the right to stop him.
Okay, because of the risk it poses, even though he's not actively like trying to shoot me or anything. Yeah, exactly. I have the authority.
But there's a degree to this, right?
Now you're cutting me off. Now you're interrupting me.
I thought you were finished. So. No, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished. I'm not trying to be
okay, so the threat he's posing to me or my family, even if it's not me, just the fact that I see him posing a threat to my family, even if it's not my family, his threat being posed to others, the risk he's creating gives me the authority to come onto his property and essentially end that threat. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, if you could stop someone from trying to or accidentally killing you, yeah.
Okay, so now let's say the guy's doing fireworks and it could start a fire that would kill people. We can go and stop him, right? What's the difference there?
Well, the difference is it's the degree, obviously. Yeah, one is like a lot worse than the other.
Burning alive is not as bad as getting shot?
I mean, being shot, I mean, shooting guns off in the air and like shooting fireworks. Like most people don't shoot fireworks to set houses on fire. Most of the time when people shoot fireworks, they don't set people's houses on fire. It seems to me to be a normal recreational activity. Nobody is being threatened by that activity. It is one thing.
Well,
it is one thing if they're being reckless with it and they're pointing it at somebody. Then you could stop them from pointing it at you. But simply just, like I said, just shooting your guns recreationally or using your fireworks recreationally. No, I can't see any reason why that should be illegal.
Okay, but there's some degree of risk.
As a category, no.
Okay, not as a category then. Okay, yeah. But let's say there is some degree of risk that if posed, we do have the authority to go and stop.
Yeah, if somebody's reckless with their thing, like for instance, if somebody's drunk driving and they're about to run you over, you could stop them from running you over. You know what I'm saying? They might not implicitly be trying to run you over. They may be in their own property, but you could stop someone from harming you.
And we determine what degree of risk is permissible subjectively. Right, there's no objective measure of how much risk is acceptable, right?
Listen, like the non-aggression principle doesn't so for instance, a lot of people ask me, they'd be like, oh, well, if somebody does this to somebody, what's the punishment for that? The non-aggression principle doesn't tell you the punishment for something, or it just tells you that if somebody is doing this, they're wrong. If somebody is threatening you, they're wrong. If somebody is violating your consent, they're wrong. Obviously, different situations, it's not always easy to determine who is in the right and the wrong. But if that person was to be threatening you, if that person was reckless to the point where they were about to harm you, like to the point where they're literally going to kill you, yeah, you could stop them from doing that. But if you could do it in a way that isn't necessarily killing them, or if you tell them, hey, stop doing that, and then they stopped, then that's another way of dealing with the situation.
Right. So is the amount of risk that is permissible, the amount of risk someone can pose to those around them, that degree of risk that is permissible is subjective, right? There's no objective way of determining.
Yeah, like I said, there's no objective way to determine it. All I'm saying is that if somebody were to do that, they would be in the wrong. If
Okay,
somebody
and
were
so
to threaten you,
society can decide. So society can subjectively decide how much risk is too much risk, right? Because there is no objective measure of what is too much risk.
nobody can decide necessarily. It really just depends on the situation and who's enforcing the laws. Like, who,
Well,
um,
well, society has laws, so we can make laws that set a threshold of risk that's not allowed, right?
yeah, and I could disagree with that, right?
Yeah, you could disagree with
Mhm.
it, but there's
And
no
I'm telling
wrong
you
being
why.
committed by
Yeah,
them.
but that's why I'm saying like
Well, wait, you
you're.
said right just there. You agree that it's okay for society to set a threshold of risk because
It
it is
depends.
subjective?
It depends. Um,
Okay, what does it depend on?
it depends on whether or not you're threatening or violating anyone's consent. So if
Well,
you're
there was a risk there, so there
deliberately,
is a
so like
threat.
if you're on your own property and you're just using fireworks recreationally, no, I don't think you should be harming anyone. But like I said earlier, if you're using it to point it at somebody to harm someone, then yeah, that person could stop you from doing it. Now, there
Yeah, but
is
the
no hard
amount of risk
standard.
that's being posed is subjective, and how much risk we're obligated to allow is subjective. So if society makes a rule setting a threshold on risk and not allowing certain actions that
Yeah,
pose risk above that
I
threshold,
don't think society can do
what is
that.
it? Why not?
But because no one threshold could apply to every situation or every person. Every
We
situation is
don't have
different.
to apply one threshold. We can have
Well, you're
different
saying that
multiple
we should
laws. We can
ban.
have mitigating factors.
You're
We can
saying that
have
we should ban fireworks.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I literally never said that. I said that society can set thresholds on how much risk an individual is allowed to pose to those around them. And you agree that degree of risk and how much of it should be allowed or how much of it
It would
is
depend on
permissible
that
is
restriction that
subjective.
you're putting on them.
Okay, but you agree it's subjective, that it's there is no way of knowing this is too much risk, this is too little. So if society sets a threshold and they say you're not allowed to do these
No, they're not
actions
allowed to
because it
do that.
poses too much risk,
No, they can't
why
pose a
not?
threshold. Well, because in the end of the day, every situation is different.
Why does
It's
okay?
impossible to set a threshold. You can't just be like, oh, well, if you use fireworks at this time at night, well, therefore you're not allowed to because you might harm somebody. Well, it's just like, wait a minute. Any threshold that you put will never make sense in every situation. So I think that it's best to go case by case. If you,
Okay, we do it case by case then.
Mhm.
Is it okay then?
Yeah, because if you if you believe that somebody was threatening you and they were harming you and you stop them, and that person felt like you were unjustly stopping them, well then they could take you to court, and then and then on the court that you guys decide, and then the judge will hear out your case, and then they'll make a decision. But to just blanketly be like, oh, you're not allowed to use fireworks at this time, or this kind of fireworks, or this and that, like, to me that's an arbitrary. It's not. It can't possibly work for every situation.
Well, you've already agreed that the amount of risk that's permissible is subjective. Like it
Yeah, but
is
I
your
told
concept of
you
arbitrary.
yes, but there's a. I'm saying that the law. I don't think the law should be arbitrary.
Okay, well, so here's what we could do with the law. We could say you're not allowed to do this, and then if someone does it, they can go to the courts and then they can argue their case.
Yeah,
Like, okay, well, let's look at my case in particular. I'm not
and if
really
yeah, if they have
actually
enough
posing, and
evidence.
well,
Sorry,
let me
yeah,
finish. I'm
sorry.
not actually posing significant risk. Can we remove my penalty? And if that's the case, the arbitrator can say, yeah, you know what, this guy wasn't actually posing that much risk. We're going to remove the penalty.
Yeah,
In
that's
that case, it
fine.
would be okay.
Yeah, that's fine because it's on an individual basis. A judge can actually look at the situation, look at the evidence, and come to a good examination. When you have a law, there's no person examining the evidence and looking at the situation.
No,
It's
there
just
is
like,
a
oh,
law. The situation you just
well, what I'm
agreed to
saying.
does
Hold on,
involve a
let me
law.
clarify. When you have like a blanket law that says like, oh, you're not allowed to use this type of firework or this type, there is no person looking at the evidence and being like, oh, well, there. Well, I mean to say, there's no uh leeway in that situation. It's if you use this firework, that's it. Like, you're just in trouble, even if you haven't hurt anybody or committed an aggression. But to me, that doesn't make any sense. So I think that it should be done on a case to case basis. Like, if you actually threaten somebody and you harm somebody, and there's evidence against you that you did do those things, they could. Yeah, I think you should. Somebody should ought to have the right to take you to court and get some restitution for that. But to put a blanket law, like, or make a categorical statement, oh, we should ban this, or you shouldn't use this on your property. I don't think it holds in every situation. I don't think it's a good way.
Okay, so I'll give you the hypothetical again to make
Mhm.
sure you agree with it then.
Mhm.
The hypothetical is that it's illegal to do the fireworks, but if you are penalized, you're permitted, it's included within the law that you can go to the court to appeal
No, 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 no.
the
I
decision
disagree with that.
or basically you're asking for a new
I
decision to
disagree with
remove the
that.
penalty that was placed on you
No,
if they can
because there shouldn't be a penalty in the first place.
subjectively determine case by case that you weren't actually posing any risk.
Yeah, but you're
So
giving
there is a
you're
blanket
committing
law
somebody a
saying you can't do
crime.
this, but
You're
there's a provision that allows you to appeal for it to be arbitrated essentially on a case by case basis. Are you okay with this?
no, I'm not okay with that because you're arresting somebody before they committed a crime. You're stopping someone from doing what they want with their private property. It's one thing um if you see somebody doing something, then you could take them to court, or if they do something, then you could take them to court. But to say you can't do it, and then if somebody doesn't like it, then you could, take away the thing. No, that's working backwards. Like you don't we don't do that with anything. I don't think we
We
don't
do
do
that
that with.
all the time. What do you mean we don't do that with anything?
Well,
We
I
do
don't think
that
we should
all
do
the
that.
time.
Yeah, I don't think we should do that.
Okay,
That's
well,
nonsense. That's nonsense because in
why
the end
why
of the
shouldn't
day,
we do that?
well, because in the end of the day, if you own your property, you should be allowed to do what you want. To say you can't do it, what you want with it, but you're allowed to do what you want with it. The only time that you're not allowed to do what you want with it is when somebody else doesn't like it. And if somebody else doesn't like it and they take you to court, you'll be penalized, but only when they prove that you have done nothing wrong, then you could take off the penalty. But it's just like, wait a minute. If you're making an accusation towards me, you need to bring forth the evidence that I did that thing. You can't just charge for me up front and then I have to show you evidence that to take it off. That I don't think that's how it should work.
Well, there would be evidence that you did the thing.
Well, if you
So
have
you
evidence,
would
then they could take me to court, right? That I've
no, we don't have to
violated
take you to
another
court.
person's consent. Yeah, then you could take me to court, and then you could charge me for whatever violence that I commit or whatever aggression that I committed.
Which you would end up in court at some point, but we could also arrest you for posing significant risk to those around you.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be charged first. You would get charged after the evidence.
No, you can. Well, okay, charged, maybe charged. You would be arrested before. That would come first. Being arrested for
No, I
posing
don't
the
believe that you should
significant
be
risk.
arrested before you go to.
It's
I mean,
ridiculous that you be
not
arrested
arrested before
before
you
you go to
go.
prison.
Sorry,
What?
I said that so wrong. Sorry. Before you get charged, I'm sorry. Before you get charged, yeah, I don't think you should get arrested before you get charged. If you're innocent, that person has to give evidence before they throw you in jail.
Well, let's say they witness you committing the crime.
Yeah, they have to
Do
prove
you
that.
have to be charged?
Yeah, they have to prove
Okay,
that.
so if someone sees you murdering someone, if a cop sees you murdering someone, they need to go to the courthouse and have the DA press charges on you before they can arrest you.
I mean, well, hmm.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Obviously, if there's an imminent threat present,
Oh
we
yeah, yeah,
can't
yeah, yeah.
go
Then
and file
obviously, no, no,
charges.
no.
And
You're right. You could stop, but the thing is, you're not arresting that person. You're stopping that person from committing the threat. So the thing is, like, I don't really necessarily believe in jail or arresting people the same way that you guys do. When I believe that someone commits an aggression against you, you have the right to commit that same aggression towards that person plus restitution. So basically, if some like private security officer were to see another person violating another person's rights, they could basically stop that person by violating their rights or not violating their rights by retaliating again or up until they or well whatever it takes to stop them.
right, so like arrest, maybe.
Yeah, if you need to arrest them, if you need to arrest them to stop them. But arresting, I mean, like, what do you mean by arresting? You mean like putting them in handcuffs or to take them to a police station?
Take them to the police station,
Oh
hook
no,
them,
like you could,
get the
you could.
charges.
I mean, yeah, you could do that then. Yeah, because if you have perfect evidence, I mean, if you have evidence, and then you take them to court, and then
No, I'm talking about when you see the act committed, you
yeah, yeah,
arrest
yeah.
them and take them to jail.
Well,
You don't have to go to
if you see
court
the
first.
act committed, you could stop them from harming you, and then you can take them. You may not be able to take them to, but you. Well, I don't know. Let me think about that. I don't
But
know.
like, okay, let's say there's a guy
I don't have
committing.
the perfect libertarian answer for this. I'll be honest.
Let's say there's a guy committing violence, and the
Mhm.
cops see him committing violence. Is it okay for the cops to arrest this guy?
I would say so, probably, because
So in what sense do you not
but the
agree with
difference
my concept of
is,
arrest?
it would depend on whether or not that person. I guess I was just trying to get some clarification. Um, I guess my thing is depends on whether or not that person violated consent or is threatening anyone.
Okay, well, I would say that in the case of someone creating threat, it's okay to arrest them, especially if they refuse to stop, even if they're on their own property. Do you agree with that?
I don't necessarily know if you could arrest them, but you could if they refuse to stop. I don't necessarily
Well,
know
that's the
if you could. I don't
hypothetical
really
that they
know if you
refuse.
could arrest them. But I do know that if they do refuse to stop, you could kill them.
So you can't arrest them, but you can kill them?
Well, the thing is, I don't really know the answer. I'll have to
Well, that's
ask
kind of.
somebody
Don't you
about
think
it.
that's kind of strange that you could you could kill them, but you can't arrest them?
Well, the thing is, there's a. Hmm. Well, this is. I don't really know how to answer that question. I'm not saying
Well,
that
it's
it
pretty
isn't.
easy
I'm
to
not saying
answer.
that it
You can
isn't.
arrest them. What do you mean?
I don't really. Probably. I don't know.
Well, let's just think. Yeah,
I'm
intuitively,
trying
it's
to give
okay
you
to
the
arrest
listen.
someone.
I know what you're trying to do, and I'm trying to be good faith here, but like I'm trying to give you the right libertarian answer to this. Um,
Well, how about you give me your thoughts on it?
my thoughts would probably be, yeah, you could arrest them, but I don't have the I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know the correct 100% libertarian answer. Somebody can maybe fact check me on that later.
Well,
I
let's
may
just point at the no harm principle and say
yeah
that arresting them's the better option.
yeah
How about that?
yeah, then I would agree with. Yeah, I'm not. I wasn't trying to be sleazy or anything or slimy or anything. I was just trying. I didn't really know how to answer the question, so I was trying to figure it out as I was.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so if someone is posing significant harm, significant being subjective, we've already kind of covered
Yeah,
that.
and if you have evidence
Uh,
that they did it, like you have evidence that they did it, right?
right, and then so you could arrest them if they refuse to stop,
But
especially. Right?
categorically, like just shooting off fireworks in your house or at your house, um, yeah, like that shouldn't be illegal.
Why not?
Well, because you're not harming anyone.
You're posing risk.
You're not necessarily.
I mean, what do you mean you're not necessarily?
You're
There is
not.
a risk.
No, just because there's some level of risk doesn't mean that you are threatening somebody. There's a gray area in these situations.
There's a gray area of whether it's enough risk. There's no
Mhm.
gray area of whether or not the
That's why I'm
risk
saying
is
that.
posing a threat. That's
Yeah,
like
that's why I'm
tautologically, if
saying
there's a
that
risk, it's posing a threat.
to put a law that you saying that you shouldn't be allowed to use this firework or that firework or this type of like it. You can't put a concrete law on something in a gray area on like that because then you're running the risk of violating a person's property rights. Because if that person was shooting off fireworks in his house and he wasn't causing a threat to anybody and he was just shooting fireworks in his house and then you arrested that person, then you violated that person's consent.
You violated their consent, but you already acknowledged we don't have to respect someone's consent in cases of them posing
Yeah, but
significant enough
shooting again, there's a
threat or
difference
harm.
between pointing again. And this is the last time I'm going to go over this because it seems like we're just going into circles. There's obviously a difference
You're
between
going in
somebody.
circles.
There's
Yeah.
obviously a difference between somebody pointing a firework at you and threatening you and doing it so recklessly that they're going to harm you, and as a result of that, and then somebody just shooting off fireworks on their property recreationally. There's obviously a different level of threat between things.
Yeah, we're not disputing whether there's a difference. What we're
So
disputing
if
is
you
whether
do
or
one
not.
thing, all I can tell you is if you do one thing is if you threaten somebody, that's wrong. You're violating someone's consent, and if you're not, well then you're allowed to do it. That's all I can tell you about that.
Well, if you can only tell me the easy answer, I'd say that's a problem with your theory.
I mean, if you don't like the
I'm
answer,
giving.
that's all I can tell you.
Well, you're giving the answer to a question I'm not asked. It's not that I don't like the answer. It's that it doesn't address my question.
Well,
I'm not
are
asking
we gonna
if you
move on to
can.
drugs because I don't I'm not I want to talk about drugs though.
Well, this is in my mind directly analogous to drugs. So we can move to drugs if you'd like. I don't know what the difference would be
Like
in the
most people
argument,
who
but
do drugs in their house aren't harming anyone.
Okay.
So I can't see why, it's like fireworks. Most people who do fireworks don't harm anyone. So it doesn't seem to me to be like a direct threat to do drugs.
Okay. It is. Now we're kind of calling it a direct
Well, not a
threat. The
direct
fact
threat
that
or
there
a
is
threat
some
or
risk.
an extreme risk that's gonna, oh my god, like if this person shoots, smokes weed, or does heroin, or does crack, like they're gonna just go out of their house and kill somebody. Like I don't think that's just that. I don't think that's how that works.
My argument for why it's I'm not arguing that because there's a risk, therefore we ought ban it. I'm just saying there is a motive there to ban these things, which would be the risk. So in the case
I
of
don't
drugs,
disagree with
there
that.
is okay. So there is motive there to ban it, and
I just
society, I would
disagree
say,
with the
has the
motive.
authority. Right, and you're welcome to. You don't have to agree with the
Yeah,
motive.
yeah, but that's why I'm here. I'm giving my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. But the point is that society has the authority to make these decisions. That's why we're going into the firework thing. Like society had, they're not actually violating anything by saying, "Oh, well,
Society
there's
isn't
too
a
much risk
person.
here."
Society isn't a person. Society doesn't have rights. Only people have rights. Individuals have rights.
Right, and the individuals in that society have a right to come together as a group and create rules that govern their society.
Not if it violates the consent of another person.
You've already agreed. You're going in circles again. We've already agreed that the consent doesn't determine whether it's okay or not. If someone's trying to kill me, I
Well,
don't. It doesn't matter if
if you're
the
not
consent.
initiating an aggression, if you're not initiating an aggression against somebody, you can't make a law saying, "Oh, you can't do that thing." Well, I don't believe you should. I don't
Sure.
think that's right.
Okay. Well, I mean, whether you think it's right or not, that just means you wouldn't support the law. But society doesn't have to only make laws that you agree with.
Yes, I know that, but we're having a debate, and I'm giving you my opinion on whether or not we should legalize drugs and why. And I'm telling you why. And the reason why is because the only way that you can enforce a drug law if the person is on their property is by violating their consent. And I don't think it's right to violate another person's consent when they have not
Right. You just
initiated an
don't think
aggression.
it would.
When they have not initiated an aggression.
You don't think it would be right, but we're not debating whether or not you think it would be right.
I don't
We're
think it should be
debating whether or
illegal.
not they have the authority. Okay, I'm not. We're not debating whether you think it should be illegal. Even
We are
we're
debating
debating whether
that.
society. No, we're not
Yes, we are.
actually.
I
We're
told you. I
debating.
sent you the message. We should debate legalizing. Do you think we should legalize drugs? And you said, yeah, no. And I said, all right, let's debate about that.
Right, exactly. Whether we should legalize drugs, not whether you want drugs legalized,
Yeah,
whether we
I
should. And
believe
I
we should
clarified
legalize
at the
drugs.
beginning of the conversation whether or not by should you meant there was some sort of moral obligation to do so. So it's not a matter of is it your preference? Do you like it? I want this. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about whether there's some obligation, something we can arrive at logically for why it should be legalized. So whether or not you want drugs to be legal really isn't the question. We're not debating whether you want drugs to be legal. We're debating whether we should legalize drugs.
Yeah, the reason why is the only way in order to stop somebody from doing drugs on their own property is by violating their own consent if they have not initiated an aggression.
Okay. Well, and I just want to point out for anyone that listens to this, like your use of aggression here and like these words for you have a different meaning than I think what most people
Do you want me to
listening will probably
clarify what
think
I
these words
mean?
mean. No, I just want to point it out that the
Yeah.
way you're using these words is not what most people have in mind when you say
Yeah, I'm
them.
giving you the anarcho-capitalist definitions of these words.
Well, the usage of the
But I'm
words, which
telling
is
you, but
fine, but
I could clearly I could define them for you guys if you don't.
I'm not asking you to define them. What I'm pointing out is that the way you're using them, the reason I don't care whether you consider it an aggression is because when you say aggression, it's not what most people think of as aggression. So I don't, yeah, you consider it an aggression for
Mhm.
me to stop someone from smoking meth. Like, okay, I'll just say, okay, I'll grant that. You do consider that an aggression.
Mhm.
And within your definition, maybe it is an aggression because of the way that you define aggression. But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean just because you consider it an aggression, even if it is an aggression under your definition, doesn't mean we should legalize drugs. There's no moral obligation. There's no normative element
Well, wait,
to
what's
you
wrong with my
considering it
definition of
aggression.
an aggression?
I'm I'm fine with granting your definition, but it being an aggression doesn't mean that we should legalize it. That's the point. Your definition of aggression
Oh,
doesn't carry with it any logical necessity that we allow it.
well then if you allow people to violate other people's consent, well then what's to stop another person from violating your consent? without your permission.
Everyone in the world, anyone who listens to this, and everyone knows this. Consent is not what determines whether something is right or wrong in all cases. If someone is trying to break into your house, you don't need their consent. Wait, you don't need their consent to stop them. If someone is stealing something from you, you don't need their consent to stop them. If someone's trying to rape you, you don't need their consent to stop them. So, like, just because we're violating an individual's consent doesn't mean that what we're doing is wrong. Now, the rapist is doing something wrong
when they have
in his violation of consent. Okay, but your use of aggression here, just so we don't have to keep kind of pussyfooting around it, go ahead and give your definition of aggression.
An aggression is a dispute, is the initiation of a conflict. A conflict is a dispute of a scarce means or contradictory actions.
Well, and by contradictory, you should define that too, because you have a special definition there too.
So basically, when two people want to use the same scarce resource at the same time, the person who initiates the conflict is the aggressor, and the owner, the person who owns it is the owner, and the person who initiates the conflict over that isn't the owner.
And how do we determine who the owner is?
Well, through homesteading or voluntary transaction.
All right. So we have. With that? I agree that that's the definition you're using. It's not. But do you disagree with
what I just said? Yeah. Like, what's the issue with what I just said?
You told me how you define these words. I disagree that that's.
Yeah, why?
Or it's not that I disagree. It's not how I use the word.
Okay, but what's wrong with what I just said? Is there anything wrong with what I just said?
Again, what you just said is this is how I define the word. So if that is how you define the words, it's not wrong. I can't say that, oh no, that's not how you define the word. It's just not how I or most other people, probably 99% of people define the word. But I feel
like it clarifies, it's a lot more clarifying.
It's clarifying on how you use the words. It clarifies how you're using them.
All right, so like, do you have an argument or?
Yeah, sure. Let's go back. Where were we exactly on the drug use here? Mm-hmm. I would say that my not allowing you to do the drugs, you may consider it an aggression because I'm stopping you from doing a thing with your body, which you say you own.
Would you consider that to be an aggression or no?
No, I don't consider that aggression.
So what is an aggression?
Aggression would have to be it's kind of like murder or theft or rape. Like it is itself wrong. So like an aggression would have to be like a wrongful act of force, otherwise, or an unjustified act of force. If it's justified, then I would consider it. Right?
No. Isn't every single
that's not part of my
conflict over scarce means?
Every conflict over scarce means, like. No, I mean, so no. Just trying to put it. No, just trying to put it through a lens of property and scarce means is silly to me.
Well, because
me and my.
Yeah.
I feel like my wife is. Well, should I even use? Let's say. Well, I don't want to bring my wife.
You can use any example as you want, my friend. I don't mind.
Let's say it's. I'm just at Walmart, and this person is being very loud and very abrasive. Like, there's no scarce means that we're having a dispute over or like a problem over. I'm just having an issue with their attitude or with their behavior.
Yeah. So she hasn't. It seems like. Have you harmed her? Have you violated her property rights?
Right. That's the point I'm making here is that that's not happening. Yet there's still this sort of dispute occurring. Like you can have interaction.
Oh, a dispute?
No, it's not a dispute over scarce resources. That's the point. You can have a dispute with people without it having to do with scarce resources.
But I'm talking about a conflict.
It could be about.
I'm talking about a conflict.
Yeah, you can have a conflict with someone. Yeah, you can enter into conflict
not be a dispute over scarce means?
Okay, let's say I'm at Walmart and this guy just keeps cussing and yelling. And I'm like, hey man, can you stop? My daughter's right here. Like, would you mind not doing that? And he's just like, fuck you, and starts getting belligerent. Well, guess what? In my mind and in the mind of most people, we're in a conflict now. Okay, even though we're not disputing scarce resources. Yeah, we're having a conflict. Yes.
You guys are having a dispute over his vocal cords.
No, we're not having a dispute over his vocal cords.
Let me explain. Yes, you are. because he
I
wants to.
get that you can try to twist
I'm
this
not
into
trying to
being that,
twist
but
it.
no,
Just
we're
allow
not.
me to answer. Allow me to explain. So he wants to use his lungs to or his vocal cords in order to speak. You don't want him to use his vocal cords in order. You guys are having a dispute over that scarce resource. You want him to stop using
No,
that thing, and
we're
he
not having a
wants to
dispute
use
over
that.
scarce
Yes,
resources.
you are,
No,
because you
we're
want
not.
him to
We're not.
stop. Do you
This
want him to
is
stop?
no. This is not how anyone thinks about this
It's
sort of
not
thing.
about
You're
how you think
forcing this.
about it. It is what's
This
going
is
on.
no. It's this is pure just weird twisting of oh well there's a person there
Well,
and a
let's go. Let's
person's a
go through
scarce
this step by
resource and
step.
there's a
Let's go through this
dispute.
step by
So
step. All right. You want him to stop yelling.
I want him to stop cussing.
You want him to stop. You want him to stop using his vocal cords.
No, he can use them.
You want him
I
to
want him to
stop using
stop
him
saying
in his vocal cords in the way that you don't like.
yes.
Okay, and he wants to use his vocal cords in the way that he does want.
Yeah, we're not having a dispute over his
So,
scarce
yeah,
resources.
and yes, you are, because you want him to stop
No,
using
we're not.
in his scarce resource in the way that he wants to, and he wants to use it in the way that he wants to. So you guys
Yeah,
are having
nobody
a dispute over
considers
that.
this a no. Nobody considers this a
I mean,
dispute
I
over scarce
understand
resources.
people
I get
don't
that you
look at
can
it that
twist it.
way,
I
but
get that
that
you
is
can
what's
twist
going
it to
on.
try to make it good. I get that you can twist it to try to make it in some way seem weirdly plausible. But no, that's not what's
I mean,
happening.
you could deny it all you want, but that is what is
I'm
going
not
on.
denying it. I don't need to deny it. It's just blatantly false. There's not a dispute over his vocal cords when this
Is.
is
You want him
happening.
to stop using
No.
his vocal cords in this certain way. He wants to use his vocal cords in a certain way, and that you guys are
All
having a
right, this
dispute
is
over that.
we can move on because this is
That's
so
fine.
brain
Yeah,
dead. I'm
yeah,
not
that's
going to
fine.
argue whether
Yeah,
or
yeah,
not
that's fine.
this is a
Do you
dispute
want to
over
move on
vocal
to
cords.
do you want to go back to drugs, or do you want to move on to prostitution?
If you have more to do about drugs, we can do that. If you want to move to
Yeah, I
prostitution,
feel like I
we
made
can.
my point. The only point is that, if you're not the only point that I've ever made through this whole thing, which is that if you're on your own property, you're not harming anybody, you're not an imminent threat to somebody, you're not like threatening somebody. Um, simply, I don't consider simply doing drugs and being in your house to be in any of that categories. Obviously, you can do hard drugs. Like, it's not impossible to do hard substances and not be an imminent threat to another person. Um, so yeah, so simply the act of doing drugs shouldn't be illegal. That's all I got. That's my last word on that. You can have
My
the
last
rest of
word
it.
would be that society has a right to self-govern, coming together as a group to determine the rules which govern their society. If they decide that they don't want to allow drugs, then that's fine. They're not violating any person. They're not actually violating any rights in this case. The only limitation here would be in cases where you are directly violating a person with your rules, which I would say not allowing them to do meth is really not a violation of.
All right, that's fair enough. But what about prostitution? I feel like at least with drugs, you can make an argument that this person might harm another person. But with prostitution, the only person whom it doesn't seem to me that anyone is being harmed in a situation. It seems to me to be a fully voluntary transaction between two parties.
Perfectly, if we had a perfect hypothetical where you just have no external, negative externalities that are being caused, and it is a perfectly consenting adult dealing with a perfectly consenting adult. There's no coercion or anything like that. I don't personally necessarily have a big problem with that. My issue would be with the framing of we should legalize it. And again, this kind of goes back to the drug thing. Society has the right to self-govern. If society decides that they don't want to allow prostitution, not allowing prostitution doesn't violate a person to not allow them to prostitute. And it doesn't violate the buyer to not allow them to solicit prostitution. So it's within that society's right to self-govern to not allow it.
Yeah, I would disagree a little bit, because again, the only way that you could stop another person from consensually having sex with another person for money is by violating their consent. Again, have no choice but to force them not to do it.
Yeah, it's okay to force people not to do things that are not allowed. What do you mean? I mean, yeah, if someone's trying to rape you, you're allowed to stop them.
Yeah, but these are I feel like, but what harm that is possibly being done that could justify the fact that we ought to make this thing? Is it
It
just
doesn't
simply
have to be
because,
justified by harm.
like, it doesn't? Is it simply just because society says so?
It's not simply because society says so. Society does have a right to self-govern, unless you want to dispute that society has a right to come together and form rules that govern their
Not that. No,
society.
I disagree with that. If it violates another person's consent, yeah, I don't agree with that.
Okay, so you're not allowed to have rules against rape then, because
That's
it would
violating another
stop the
person's
rape.
consent.
Okay,
I said
but
if did
you're
I
violating
literally
the
said
rapist's
if you're
consent.
not. I said if you're not violating a person's consent, you're allowed to do what you want. That's
No, you said you
obviously a
can't
rapist
violate
is
someone's
violating
consent, or at
another
least that's
person's.
how I heard it.
No, if that's what I said, I didn't mean in that way. I said that you're allowed to do what you want so long as you're not violating another person's consent. Obviously, a rapist is violating another person's consent. So, like, if you're doing drugs, you're not violating anyone's consent. You're not harming anyone. I mean, if you're having sex, especially if you're having sex consensually with another person as well, especially if you're having sex with another person, it's literally just two people in a bedroom. Yeah,
Well, it's a little more than that because we're talking about prostitution. But okay, so you dispute that society has the right to come together and create rules in this fashion. So why? I mean, I know that you say, oh, well, because we should be allowed to do whatever
yeah,
we
well,
want.
because I
So
believe
why?
in self-ownership, and property rights. It
Okay,
always goes
so
back to that.
why should society not be allowed to do it then? Self ownership. Okay, you
Again,
own
yeah,
your
because
body. We'll
you
say.
own your body, and any person that stops you from having sex for money would be violating your consent.
Yeah. Okay. Why is that wrong though?
Well, because you're the only person that uses your body, or is in control of your body. Any other person that uses your body would be basically claiming ownership over your body, and it's then if then you wouldn't really have any property rights at that moment. Anyone could just take anything from anyone, claim anything from anyone, at
Well,
any
no, you
point.
wouldn't be allowed to take anything from anyone. You're allowed to stop people who are violating the rules that society comes to.
Yeah,
That
but if
I don't know how
society
you get from
comes
that.
to and make a rule that it's okay to rape people, I mean, what can you say to stop that?
I already pointed out the rules society comes to. You can't violate a person. You can't treat a person as merely a
Why?
means.
Because you think so? Because you think it's wrong?
Well, I can tell you why it's wrong. It's wrong because there's a sort of contradiction that occurs whenever, because you don't want to be raped, you don't want to be murdered. For you to then say, okay, well, it's okay to murder or rape this other person, once you open the door of it
But
is
that's the
okay to rape
argument
and
that I
murder,
made.
and then you go, okay, well, you can't murder and rape me.
That's the
There's a
argument that I
contradiction
made.
there.
That's the argument that I made. That's you're saying that, but I
If
just
it
said
is
it in
okay
a
to rape, then it's okay to rape you. If it's okay to murder, it's okay to
yeah.
murder you. But
So if
obviously, you
it's
don't
okay to
consider it
stop,
okay to murder
if
you,
it's okay to stop one
and you don't
person from
consider it.
having sex, then it's okay to stop anyone from having sex. Like, why would
Well,
it
we're
be
not.
wrong for society to stop everyone from having sex?
You'd have to give an argument for why it's okay to
No,
make it
well,
to where nobody can have sex.
I'll just concede to the argument in which you've been making this whole time. Society has come together and they have the right to make rules, and well, that is what it is.
Okay, well, obviously you don't want it to be a rule to where. I mean, you're essentially
Yes,
ending
I'm
society at
arguing
that
that
point.
I'm arguing against. I arguing that society is not a good metric for what people to choose what people should be doing with their bodies. I think it should be consent based.
You,
And you agree with me
if
on
we're
this.
talking,
Sorry.
whether I agree with what we on you on certain like particulars of what we should or not even should, but like what I would have a preference for is different from what I would say that we should or shouldn't do. I would say we should follow the law in cases where the law is not.
And if the law was that you are not allowed to have sex, what can you do?
I would say that this would be a illegitimate law. I mean, I find it very unlikely that you're going to have a society
based on
the fact that the legitimacy of the state is going to come from their enforcement of the will of the people.
But they're able to enforce it. They could stop you from having sex, right?
Yeah. So if this is the case that there's a society that just doesn't want to allow sex, well then sure. I mean, I guess like
You would
more
have no
power
choice
to
but
them.
to you would have, hey, I can't do nothing. Society, it's what society says.
No, I can do something. I would leave that society.
But let's say every society, all the societies, they're all just like a bunch of crazy people who believe that we should just not have more children, and you're just the odd guy out.
I guess I'd have to go live on a boat.
But you don't see like the issue with that. Like you don't see that it's just like there has to be some sort of deontological view. Like you can't just succeed every issue to society.
I'm not. Society's not allowed to treat people as merely a means to their own ends.
Yeah, but you're
And I think there could be a
based
case
on your
made.
opinion, right?
No, based off there being a contradiction, because they don't want to be treated as merely a means to other people's ends. So if they can't both say it's okay to treat.
And I'm making that argument towards prostitution. If you could stop one
Right,
person from having sex, why not anyone can stop anyone from having sex?
You keep going back to, well, society could just do everything. So I'm just going to point out, well, no, society can't just make any rule they want, because if they treat people as merely a means to their own ends, there's a contradiction there, because they do not want to be treated as merely a means
so it isn't
to
based
other
on
people's
society.
ends. They do not want to be treated as merely a means.
Society should do.
They do not want to be treated as merely a means to other people's ends. So for them to say it is okay to treat other people as merely a means to our ends, while both saying it's not okay to treat certain people as merely a means to our ends, would be a contradiction.
Well, they could say it's okay to make some people use a means to an end. They could say that.
No, you would have to universalize it, because by doing that, they would basically be saying that it's okay for people to say it's okay to treat
the same way that is if you were to say you're not allowed to have sex in this instance, well, that doesn't make any sense. You have to universalize it, because if you say you can't have sex in this instance, well, then you basically give society the right to say you can't have sex in any instance, or anyone can have sex with anyone in any instance.
No, if we say you're not allowed to have sex with a prostitute, the only, when we universalize it, it's just I'm not allowed to have sex with a prostitute either. That's when we universalize it. That's
you're saying outcome. Okay, but let's say I had a law that made it so that you're allowed to murder some people sometimes, or some people, like certain people.
I mean, no. If murder is like tautologically not okay, so like a contradiction.
Well, you're allowed to murder sometimes, but if you murder for money, it's not okay.
If it's okay, then it's not murder. Like tautologically.
Oh, well, then you're allowed to kill sometimes. You're allowed to kill other people, but if you kill for money, then it's not okay. Could society make that rule?
Yeah, we do make that rule. That is a rule. That is a rule. What are you talking about?
You are allowed to kill people?
Yeah, you're allowed to kill people. If someone starts breaking in my house right now, I'm allowed to kill them.
Well, what if they have not initiated an aggression?
If they're breaking into my house, for me, that's an aggression. I'm killing that person.
Let's say they have not broken in their house. They're just walking down the street and you shot them. You killed them.
No, I can't kill that person.
Okay, so then you don't have you're basically saying that it's okay to kill people in some instances, but it's not okay to kill people in other instances.
Yeah, it's not a question. When we universalize,
so you don't have a universalizable ethic on that.
Yes, I do. When we say universalize, yes, I do. When we say universalize, it doesn't mean all circumstances. We're not universalizing it to all circumstances. We're universalizing it to all people. So if I make a rule that says it's okay to rape, well, guess what? It's okay to rape me. If I say it's okay to kill people for breaking into houses, it's okay to kill me for breaking into houses. It universalizes to all people. It doesn't mean that, okay, if it's okay to kill people in some circumstances, it's okay to kill people in all circumstances.
Mm-hmm. No,
it just applies to everyone. When we universalize it, it applies to everyone, not that it applies to all circumstances.
I get what you're saying, but the issue is when you restrict people's rights in terms of like when they have not initiated an aggression. Like to me, it's like you can either initiate an aggression or you can not initiate life. So when you make laws based on like when people have not initiated an aggression, well then basically that creates situations where they can make laws about any situation when they have not initiated.
We can make laws that affect people, even if there has not been what you call an aggression. We already went over this with the guy shooting guns on his property. He hasn't committed an
Well, a
aggression.
threat is an
And we
aggression.
can still, okay, then fine. There is some degree of threat posed. There's negative externalities to
Yeah,
prostitution.
what threat
As
is
a
being
society,
posed?
we don't want to
Yeah,
endure.
what threat is being posed by prostitution? Like if you have sex with another person.
Child sex trafficking. Child sex trafficking is a pretty big threat.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about child sex traffic. I'm talking about two people having sex who are adults
Okay,
consensually. Obviously, I'm not going to support
if there's
that.
no prostitution, is there going to be children being or pimps being paid to have sex with children if there's no prostitution?
If there's no prostitution, I don't think we can get rid
You
of
realize
prostitution.
that you realize a lot of prostitutes are minors, right?
Yeah, I don't think we can. Well, I don't support that. I think prostitution should be.
Yeah, I'm
by
not
two
asking
consenting
whether
adults.
you support
I
it.
think
I'm not
that-
asking whether you support it. I'm pointing out that
Yes,
there's
I
negative
understand. Yes, there are
externalities.
negative externalities. I think that should still be illegal. I'm not talking about making that legal. I'm talking about making it so that when two consenting adults have sex, they can exchange money for that transaction. If two people,
Right, and
yeah,
a negative externality of prostitution is that it kind of bolsters the market for sex trafficking.
well, that's would still be illegal. Sex trafficking would still be illegal. It's just the act of having
Right.
sex for money. I don't think should be illegal. If you are an adult,
Okay, but let's say society comes together and they say, well, we don't want these negative externalities that come with allowing prostitution. Why would they not be
How does-
permitted in doing so?
what about negative? I mean, I don't see how allowing a person to have sex for money causes children to have sex with money. That's like, I don't see how that's connected.
I don't know how you don't see that that's connected. Do you think it, like in New York City right now, there's probably a lot of prostitutes.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say that walking around and selling your body for sex. Oh, I'm sorry, selling your body for money. Obviously, this is very
you
redundant
having sex with
sentence,
a
but anyway.
prostitute doesn't contribute to another person having sex with a minor. That's
Right. Let's say though it's allowed to just go out on the street and sell your body into prostitution.
Mhm.
Do you think that that's going to increase or decrease the number of minors doing it?
I don't know, but
You don't know, no
that's
idea
separate-
whether or
that's
not that
separate-
would increase
to me,
or decrease.
To me, that's separate from whether or not anyone's rights are being violated in a situation. So one situation you're saying, like that's kind of like saying, oh, we should make McDonald's illegal because if we allow McDonald's,
Society could do that. Society
Yeah.
wanted to do that.
Oh, hold
could,
on, allow
yeah.
me to finish. And I already know what you're gonna say, but like, you could be like, oh, well, we should ban McDonald's because it's, even though most people who eat McDonald's generally are healthy, there are a lot of bad negative externalities, such as that some people are going to be more likely to become more obese. But I would say, in the end of the day, you eating McDonald's doesn't cause that other thing. That thing was caused on its own. Somebody raping a child, you engaging in prostitution isn't causing that. That person, the person who's causing the rape, is responsible for it, not you. So even if it did go up, that's not the fault of people prostituting. That's the fault of the people who are committing that negative action.
I'm not arguing on whose fault it is. I'm arguing whether or not society has some
No, I don't
authority
think-
to
I don't-
make these rules.
Yeah, I don't think they have the right to do that because the only way that you could stop another person from having sex with money, again, is by violating their.
Okay, but again, I don't care if you consider it a violation of their consent. Like, give me a logical argument. I guess why is that violating their consent? Why does that make it not okay?
Well, because if you want to have sex with another person, someone stopping you, that's you're not allowing that person to have sex. That's quite literally violating.
I'm asking, why does not allowing that? Why is that violation of consent? Why does that make it not okay? Why
because
is
you
it
own
not
your
okay to
body.
violate consent?
And if you create
Okay,
a situation where another person is able to violate your consent, what's to stop other people from you violating your consent in other situations?
They could violate my consent in other situations.
Yeah, I don't think that's right.
So long as they're not violating my person.
If you have not initiated an aggression, no person should have the right to violate your consent.
I would even go so far as to say you are committing an aggression. Whenever you thwart the rules that society has come together, they've agreed on these rules, they put these rules into place through some legitimate process, and then you break those rules, you're committing an aggression.
Yeah,
I would say.
If
So there, we can.
me
So there,
having
now we
sex with a
can violate your.
prostitute is committing an aggression.
Yeah, you're committing
Against
an
who?
aggression. You're violating the rules.
Against
Society.
who? Society. Oh yeah, who?
Society.
Who is that?
Yeah.
Who's society?
Society. The people within the community.
Yeah, I don't
whatever
think
the
you can
society
violate
is.
a group's rights. You can only violate individuals.
Okay, you are violating the rights of those individuals
Yeah,
within that
how?
society by breaking the rules they came together and agreed on.
I don't see anyone's consent being violated by me having sex with a prostitute.
Well, you're committing aggression, so we can violate your consent there.
No one's consent is being violated
can
by
force
me having
you.
sex with a prostitute.
Yeah, I didn't say you're violating consent.
Well,
we can force you.
You said
you're committing an aggression. Yeah, you are.
I'm not. Whose
So-
consent am I violating?
You're committing an aggression. I didn't say you're violating
What do you
consent.
mean by aggression? Are you using my definition of aggression or yours?
By aggression here, I mean you're taking an unjust.
Oh well, then yeah. If that's your definition, then yes. When I don't think.
Okay, cool. So you're committing an aggression, so therefore we can force you to stop.
No, I don't think you should be allowed to
No?
stop that person because that person owns their body and they should be allowed to have sex with whomever they want. Under my definition,
well, you're
they have
committing an act.
Under my definition, they have not committed an aggression, so they have done.
Okay, but I don't have to. It doesn't matter if it's under your definition. I would say that you are doing a thing.
You're asking me questions and I'm answering it. You know, I understand you don't care about consent.
No, I'm not asking a question at this point. I'm giving you my position. My position would be you're committing an act that's wrong, and therefore we can violate your consent because you're committing a wrongful act.
Prostitute for money?
It's violating the rules that the society has come together and agreed upon.
But is that the only reason you think it's wrong?
Yeah.
So
well, obviously the negative externalities and stuff play into it too, but I would say this is the most important reason.
If you have sex with a woman that's a prostitute, you're not causing that other person to have sex with children or sell other women, right?
Doesn't matter. The problem is that you're violating. Yeah, I don't care if you're at fault for that.
Well, then
the problem is that you're committing a wrongful act, so therefore we can force you to stop.
Yeah, but so society considers something to be wrong, they can just stop you from, even if it violates your consent, and even if you have not initiated an aggression.
So long as it doesn't violate any rationally derived moral principles that violate your person or treat you as merely a means to an end, as long as that's not occurring, yeah, society can make those rules and force you to stop.
Who determines what that is? That's subjective. Is it?
Not really. I mean, if we're deriving it from
that's
reason.
Not objective.
Yeah, I mean, what's subjective?
What, do you believe in objective morality?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you know what is objective?
When we can derive it from reason.
Yeah, but what if I disagree with you? Not objective, right?
No, you disagreeing. I mean, you can be irrational. It's fine for you to. I mean, you being irrational doesn't make it not objective.
So how do we figure out the truth statement there?
The truth statement in what?
Like, I don't agree with your outlook. You don't agree with my outlook. How do we find the truth statement there?
Through reason.
Yeah, how did you do that?
So, let's say we have the case of murder, or what's rape is unfortunately the best example. You're forcing someone to do something. There's no, if to be forced to do something, clearly you don't want to do it. Like tautologically, you don't want to do it because you're being forced. Okay, so for you to say it's okay to rape other people would be to say that it's okay to rape you. It's okay to force you, but to be forced to do it entails that you're not okay with it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be rape. You wouldn't be forced because you're okay with it. So the fact that you're not okay with it. The fact that you're not okay with it, there would be a logical contradiction there. So we can derive from this.
Would it be fair to say that if you say that I could stop this person from having sex when they have not violated another person's consent, then
Well, let's not change the subject. You wanted to get into this.
Mhm.
Do you acknowledge that there would be a logical contradiction in
No, of
saying it's
course, yeah,
okay
of
to
course, I
rape
agree with
people?
that. But that would
Okay,
also
so you
apply.
agree
That would
then that
also,
wait,
yeah, go
real
ahead.
quick. You
No, no, no.
agree then that we can derive some moral principles for behavior based purely on reason.
Yeah,
We can derive that you
but I'm
should
gonna
not rape.
explain why banning prostitution would
Explain
go
why
against
it's
that.
subjective.
Why that would go
Well,
against your reasoning.
don't change the subject here. Tell me what's subjective about that. You
Because
said
you're
before that. Well, no, it's
because it
still
isn't
subjective.
objectively wrong to be a prostitute.
Okay, no, I'm you said that any moral principle is going to be subjective, and I just gave you one that's derived purely from reason to where it is objectively wrong.
No,
So
I've
can
never said
you
that. What I was going to do was I was going to explain why your
well, no,
objective
I don't want you
truth
to change the
goes against
subject
what
now
you were
that I've
saying.
given you the answer. I want you to
Are you
acknowledge
going to
that
allow
we
me to
can
finish, or are you
derive.
just going to keep cutting me off?
No, I'm not going to. I want you to acknowledge that I've just given you a moral principle derived
Yeah, I
from
don't agree
reason
that
that
it's
is
a.
objective.
Okay, listen. I agree that
There-
I agree that in that thing, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily objective. I don't know if
Okay, so
I
what's
necessarily
subjective
agree.
about it? Okay, then don't change the subject. Tell me what's subjective about it. Don't
Well,
just
then
change the
because
subject.
some people may disagree with you.
Okay, tell me what is subjective about it. Just saying some people disagree is yeah,
Well,
people
because
can be irrational.
there's no moral, there's no objective truth in which I don't think we could point to that would automatically
Okay,
prove that is automatically true.
would you say that deductively it must follow, like logically, from what I just gave you, we can conclude that okay, yes, rape is wrong. Like people do not want to
Yeah,
be
that's your
raped.
opinion. I think that in the end of the day,
Well, it's not my opinion. I just gave you the argument for it.
yeah, you're you're giving your opinion. It's not an objective truth that rape is wrong. There are people who may disagree with it, obviously.
Okay,
People.
I guess I can give you the argument again because if okay, to rape someone is to force them into sex, right?
Mhm.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So if I say it's okay to rape people, then it's okay to rape me, correct?
Yes.
If it's okay to rape, then it's okay to rape me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if it's okay to rape me, it's both okay. I'm okay with rape, so I'm okay with being raped, but I'm not okay with being raped because rape entails that it's forced, that I'm not okay with it. So I'm both okay with it and not okay with it. There's a contradiction there, right?
Well, then it wouldn't be rape. You basically what you're saying is
Exactly.
you're okay
That's the
with
point.
another person
Exactly. It
having sex
wouldn't.
with you
Right. Right. So it's
without
okay to
asking.
rape, but you can't rape me.
Basically what you're saying.
I can't be.
Yeah, but that it
I
wouldn't
can't
be
be
rape
okay with
because
rape.
the other person,
Right.
because the other person wouldn't, they wouldn't consider that to be rape.
Right. You can't be okay with being raped, right? Logically, you can't be okay. Like objectively.
No. But then
Right.
it would depend on whether
Objectively.
or not
Right.
that person
So
would
it's not
be considered.
subjective, right?
Can you stop
Objectively.
interrupting
Wait.
me? You're not
Objectively,
allowing me to
then you
answer the
cannot be
question.
okay with being raped.
Where's the
right?
moderator? Is he gonna just be allowed to continue to interrupt me?
Do you
Am I not
agree?
allowed to speak?
Objectively, you cannot be okay with being raped.
Well, not necessarily, because there are maybe some people who disagree with your definition of rape. They may not consider that to be rape. There's no objective metric for rape. Are you there?
Why don't we just chop off the word objective?
Yeah, I
'Cause
think
that
that
seems
just
to
makes
be
it more.
turning into a red herring.
I agree. I agree. In the end of the day, we're talking about what we believe the law ought to be, and I believe the law ought to be that if two people want to have sex for money, that's their right. And
I don't
if you
think
could
you have an argument.
stop, yeah, if you could stop one person for having sex for any reason, for any situation, well, then what's to stop them from having sex in any situation?
Yeah, the universalization principle doesn't mean all circumstances it's permissible to do whatever action. It just means that we apply it to all people. So this idea that just because it's okay to do something in some circumstances, therefore we can do it in all circumstances, just doesn't hold. Like
Well,
you
would agree that
show
by
that.
stopping another person from having sex, you're violating their consent.
It's okay to violate their consent.
Yeah. So
It's okay to force people not to do things that are wrong.
It's okay to violate people's consent in some situations, but it's not okay in other situations. So basically, but when you say it's okay to violate a person's consent in this situation, you basically create a situation where they could violate your consent.
In that situation, yes.
Initiated an aggression.
In that situation, yes. In the same situation, yes. If I'm saying it's not okay to be a prostitute or to buy a prostitute, well, guess what? It's okay for everyone else to tell me, well, guess what?
No, I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like that. I mean it like
that's the position I'm giving you.
If you're allowed to violate a person's consent, well, then any other person, when you have not initiated aggression, you're opening the door for other people to violate your consent when you have not initiated an aggression.
Depending on the circumstances, yes.
No, not depending on the circumstances. Whatever they think is okay.
No, it is. No, it is depending on the circumstances.
But then how do you determine what circumstance is the best? Is it based on society or is it based on your opinion?
It cannot violate the moral principles that we can derive from reason, and then assuming that is not occurring.
This is why we're never going to go anywhere with this.
Assuming that is not occurring, then yes, society would make the decision.
So it's okay to violate people's consent.
It's okay to force people to do things that are wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's okay to violate people's consent when they have not initiated an aggression.
Right. If someone's doing something wrong, it's okay to force them to stop,
so when you're
even if they don't want to stop.
So if when you're sitting in your house, I'm allowed to stab you. I'm allowed to violate your consent when you have not initiated an aggression, and so long as society thinks that it's okay.
No.
But that's what you just said.
No, it's literally not. I literally just said it's not okay to violate the person, and then you're like, well, what if I stab you? Well, clearly that's a violation of the person.
You said that it's okay to stop a person from having sex for money. That is stopping a person from violating their consent when they have not initiated an aggression, right?
No, I said it's okay to stop someone from doing something that's wrong. And you said, well, what if I come in your house and stab you? Well, you're not stopping me from doing something wrong at that point. You're doing something wrong.
You're baking in the word wrong. You
want
to stop someone from having sex. You want to unconsensually stop someone from having sex when they have not initiated an aggression. You think that's right, right?
Assuming the rules of that society is that they cannot engage in prostitution.
So you think it's okay you think when society determines that it's okay to violate another person's consent when they have not initiated an aggression, that's okay?
No, not if it violates the person or rules or moral principles that we can derive from reason. If it's going to violate those moral principles, then it's not okay.
Okay,
but assuming
so
that it does not, assuming it does not, then yes, it is okay.
So would violating a person's consent when they have not initiated an aggression count onto that?
Then it would be okay. Then it would. Assuming that it doesn't violate those moral principles, then yes,
I'm asking you a direct
question. Assuming that it does not violate those moral principles, yes, it is okay to force someone to do something that violates the rules of the society.
So you think it's okay to violate another person's consent when they have not initiated an aggression? Is you sitting in your house, not initiating an aggression, me coming up to you and stabbing you, would that not be... What makes that not okay versus the other situation?
I'll tell it to you again.
Is it society?
Assuming that it doesn't violate the moral principles we can derive from reason, such as treating a person as merely a means to an end, violating their person directly without justification, assuming you're not doing any of that.
Wait, that's subjective. Without justification, whose justification?
You'd have to have some logical justification. You'd have to have some way
so
to
violating
to
a person would violating a person's consent when they have not initiated an aggression fall under that? Yes or no?
Again, it would depend on whether or not you're violating one of these rationally derived...
Would violating another person's consent when they have not initiated an aggression fall under that?
It would depend on whether they're violating one of the moral principles that we can derive from reason and whether or not it's violating society. You're not giving me context. It would depend. I'm telling you what it would depend on, and you're going, "Oh, well, you don't know." And it's like, well, it depends on these things. Oh, well, you don't know. You
can either believe that it's okay.
I keep answering your question, and you keep asking a question that contradicts my question.
There's 2 roads ahead of you. There's two roads ahead of you. You can either think it's not wrong to initiate an aggression against somebody when they have not violated another person's consent, or you could think that it is wrong, right? There's only two roads.
You would be committing the aggression. When you commit the act that violates the legitimate rules of the society, that don't violate your own
Listen, under my definition
you're the
of
one
aggression,
committing the aggression.
listen, you're dodging. You're pivoting.
No, I'm not dodging.
Under
I'm not
my
pivoting
definition
either.
of aggression, there's only two roads you could take. You can either
I don't
think
care
that it's right.
if it's under
you can
your
either,
definition.
Listen to me. You don't dodge. You can either believe that it's okay to violate another person's consent when they have not initiated aggression, or you can not think that it's okay. Which one do you choose?
Right. I would say you're the one committing the aggression because you're violating the rules of the society that don't violate your person.
Whose consent have I violated by having sex with a prostitute?
You're violating the rules of the society.
Who's the society?
You're the aggressor.
What person's whose rights have
the
I
individuals
violated?
the individuals within that society.
So I violated the individual's consent, all of them?
No, you violated their right to self-governance, their right to come together
I don't care about
and
their
create
rights to
rules.
self-governance. All I care about is their consent.
Okay, well, I do.
Have I violated their consent?
No, you violated their right to self-governance.
Yeah, I don't care about that. I don't believe anyone has a right to self-governance. In the end of the day, you have right to your body, and no one has the right to tell you what you can and can't do if you're not violating another person's consent. If you make a situation where it's okay to violate this person's consent when they have not initiated an aggression, you could basically make that all across the board. The society can make that true for any situation in any situation, basically.
You can feel that way. I mean, there's no logical argument you can give for why I ought just allow you to do whatever you want to do.
I've already did, but that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to move on to intellectual property?
Sure. What do you have on that?
Oh, yeah. So the reason why I'm against intellectual property is because the only way, I guess this comes back to the consent thing, which is the only way that you can stop another person from copying your idea by violating their consent. If you own so for instance, if you create a stick and make a spear, and the state were to give you a patent for that spear stick, and they're basically making it so that it is illegal for any other person to create that spear stick and sell it. And that's a violation of private property rights, because ownership, again, is the right to control a scarce resource.
Cool, and I would say the society has the right to self-governance. So if they decide that they want to protect intellectual property, that's within their right. It's not violating any moral principles derived from reason. It's not violating your person. It's not treating you as merely a means to their ends. So society is well within their right to self-govern on this.
Again, my question that it seems like you don't really want to answer is: violating another person's consent go against that objective truth? When they have not
if they're doing something wrong,
when they have not initiated an aggression.
Well, they are committing an aggression.
So when I say committing an aggression, you're violating the consent of another individual.
No, I would say aggression is when you're committing a wrongful act.
Okay, so then you're not committing.
They're committing a wrongful act.
So then,
they are committing an aggression.
Listen,
you're committing an aggression.
I'm not using your definition
to stop.
of a.
I'm not using yours.
Okay,
I'm not using yours.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I'm giving you a specific question. You think it's okay to does consent fall under that? Do you think it's okay to violate another person's consent when they have not initiated an aggression, when they have not violated another person's consent?
Well, they have committed an aggression by committing a wrongful act, so therefore we can force them to stop. They've committed a wrongful act, so we can force them to stop. They've committed an aggression. That's not my question.
You're dodging my question.
I'm not dodging it. I'm just not using
your
special pet definition for these words.
Is it okay to violate another person's consent when they have not violated another person's consent?
It is, because they're committing an aggression. Yeah, so it is okay.
What aggressive act have they committed?
Violating the rules of the society.
So violating the rules of society is an aggression?
Yes, assuming those rules don't violate moral principles derived from reason, they don't treat you as merely a means to an end, and assuming that they don't violate your person.
What if society disagrees with those rules? Then what?
If society disagrees with what rules?
Those objective rules in which you just put forth.
Well, then they would be wrong.
So then what would you do then?
I wouldn't have to follow their. I mean, if their society is making a rule that is wrong in that case.
So if you have if society has a rules in which you think is unjust from your objective standpoint, then you would be okay in not following that.
If society is violating morality, then yeah, you don't have to follow society's rules that violate morality.
Yeah, violating a person's consent when they have not violating another person's consent. There you go.
Well, they're committing aggression, so it's okay to force someone to stop.
But not if you're not violating another person's consent.
Sure, it is, because they're the person that you're stealing the work from, in the case of IP,
you're defaulting to society, but you don't agree with that. You obviously agree that society could be wrong. It isn't based on society; it's based on this objective.
Society could be wrong, but assuming society
it's not based on society. Then it's based on this objective truth. It's not, because if society disagreed with your objective truth, then you wouldn't agree with society. You would say society is wrong, and I'm not going to agree with that.
No, the society has to stay within certain bounds.
So if society disagrees with that, and they put a rule that it's okay to rape people, then you would just sit back and be like, "Hey, it's okay to rape people."
No, because that would obviously be treating people as merely a means
does
to an
not
end.
matter. Society's opinion on the matter does not matter.
Society does
does
matter.
not. Because if it violates this objective truth,
it does matter. Because society. No, let me explain to you. Because society can make rules that don't violate this objective truth.
Okay, so then
most of the rules don't violate.
So it's based off of this subjective truth, right?
No, the subjective truth, this morality, so long as they're not violating morality with their rules, the obligation is on you to follow the rules, because they have a right. Right, you have to follow the rules because they have a right to self-govern.
If they don't follow those rules, then society's opinion on the matter doesn't matter.
If society's doing something immoral,
society's opinion doesn't fucking matter. It's what matters.
No, society
is the rules.
does matter, because
those rules that you believe
society
in.
does matter, because if you can derive a rule strictly from reason that supports eliminating IP protections, then sure, go for it.
Okay, so I just said that violating another person's consent when they have not violating another person's consent opens the door for other people to do the same thing. Wouldn't you agree?
No, it's okay to violate consent in the case of someone committing an act that's wrong.
What would be wrong? What how do you determine what's wrong?
In this case, the thing being done that's wrong is violating the rules of society, and the rule that the society has does not violate.
So if society thinks it's okay to rape somebody,
if you let me finish the answer real quick, the rule society has in place here on IP does not violate any moral principles. There's no violation of moral principles involved in this rule.
So then,
it's okay for them to have.
Matter.
It's okay for.
So then, the opinion doesn't
it's
matter.
okay.
It must follow the objective truth.
So it's okay. So it's okay for society to have this rule because it doesn't violate moral principles.
But it isn't.
No, it is. Society has this rule that does not violate moral principles.
It isn't based on society. You're not basing your ideology on society. You're basing this ideology on this. On this principle here, society.
You're not understanding.
It doesn't matter what society thinks. If their society, hold on, if society doesn't agree with your moral principles, then you don't care what they have to say, right?
If they're violating moral principles,
so then society's opinion doesn't matter. What matters is your objective.
No, society's opinion does matter because society can create rules that don't violate moral principles. That's what you're not understanding.
But they have to follow those moral principles. They have to follow those moral principles, right?
They have to follow the moral principles, but they can make rules.
And if they don't go with those moral
rules that don't violate the moral principles. Society can make rules that don't violate the moral principles.
Yeah, and if it does,
and you have the burden of following those rules.
And if
society does matter.
Yeah, so if it does violate those rules, then society's opinion on the matter doesn't matter.
In the case of society acting immorally, correct.
So then
you don't have to follow
opinion
immoral
doesn't matter.
rules.
What matters is the objective truth in which you believe in.
No, society does matter because they can create rules that don't violate moral principles.
Yeah, but it's based on those moral principles. But it's based on those moral principles.
They can make rules that don't violate the principle.
But if they do,
and you have the obligation.
You wouldn't agree with those rules. You would not.
But if they don't, so there are rules they can make that don't violate moral principles, and
but
you do need to follow those rules.
There are rules that society can make
right? Okay, just because there's some pets that are cats doesn't mean there's no pets that are dogs. Okay, you get that? There can be rules that Yes, you are. That's literally what you're arguing right now. That
No,
because
I'm saying
some
that
rules,
society.
yes, no. What you're arguing is that because some rules could violate moral principles, therefore we don't have to respect any rules. No, we just
I'm
don't
not
have to
saying
respect
that.
the rules
I'm
that
saying that
violate
you're not
moral
basing
principles.
your.
It is
You're
what
not,
you're saying.
No,
It is what you're
let me
saying. You've said it
explain.
100 times
Stop.
that we don't have
Let
to
me
follow the rules of society. That
explain.
society is irrelevant because they could put forth rules
I'm
that
saying
violate
that
moral
if you
principles.
believe
We just don't
that-
have to listen to the rules that violate moral principles. We do have to listen to the rules
Am I allowed
that
to
don't
speak?
violate moral principles. Not if you're going to keep saying the same
Is there
stupid
a
shit over and
moderator
over.
here? Varsity? Are you moderating this shit? You said that you weren't going to interrupt me.
You've interrupted the whole time, guy. Are you really going to be a little crybaby about interrupting when you started this debate with interrupting? Are you kidding me?
It's okay to interrupt once in a while, but if I want to say something, just...
You interrupt constantly. You constantly interrupt, guy.
But if you tell me not to interrupt you, I stop talking and I let you say it, right? But you need to say, right?
I'll let you talk. Okay. Go ahead. I'll let you talk.
Listen, I don't mind if you interrupt me once in a while, but like if I say directly, hey, let me say something, then I stop and I let you say it, right?
Yeah, I guess you're pretty good about that.
Yeah,
sure.
I try to
I'll
be
let you talk now.
So, all I'm trying to say is that society's opinion doesn't matter, because if society disagrees with your moral principle, then you wouldn't follow that rule.
Right? I just told you why what you're saying is wrong. Like I've spent the last 10 minutes.
But you wouldn't follow that rule, right?
Wrong. I wouldn't follow rules that violate moral principles.
Okay,
but
so
that
then it doesn't matter what society thinks.
Yes. No, society's rules do matter because not all their rules violate moral principles. Why do you not get that?
But
just
some
because
of them
not
can,
all
right?
pets are
but some
cats
of them can,
doesn't
right?
mean some of them can. Yeah.
Okay,
you
so
don't
then
have to
if they
follow
do, if they do, are you going to follow it?
Not the ones that violate
okay, so then you don't care what
principles?
society thinks it based off of your moral principles.
I do care because not all the rules violate moral principles.
I
not
understand
all the rules
that, but there
violate
can be rules that could violate moral principles. You agree with that, right?
You can have
And
a
if
pet
there are-
that is a cat.
And if there
you
are,
can have
you
a pet
disagree
that
with
is
them.
a cat.
Okay,
You can have a pet that is a cat. Does that mean no pets or dogs?
No. But that's not what I'm saying.
Exactly.
But
right. It is what you're saying. It is what you're saying.
What
you
I'm
just
saying
don't
is
quite
you don't care about what
understand it.
society really thinks. What really matters
I
is
do
your
care what
objective
I do
principles.
care what society thinks because not all of society's rules violate moral principles.
So consent
society
doesn't
has
fall
rules
under
that
moral
don't
principles.
violate moral principles.
Violating another person's consent when they have not violated another person's consent don't fall under your principles.
We have an obligation to follow the rules of society, which do not violate moral principles. I'm going to say it again though, because you keep right, and I want you to acknowledge. I want you to acknowledge something because you keep saying the opposite. My position is that
I'm going to keep asking you the same question until you answer.
And I'm going to tell you again until you acknowledge it, because you keep contradicting it.
So if society does your moral principle think that it's okay to violate a person's consent when they have not initiated, when they have not violated another person?
Right. And my position is that we must follow society's rules because society has a right to self-govern.
So is that a yes
we
or
must
is that
follow
a no?
their rules.
Are you going to keep dodging?
We must follow. I'll let you finish and then I'll talk. Go ahead. What do you have to say? I won't interrupt you. Say what you want to say.
I'm literally giving you a yes or no answer question.
Okay, now I'm going to say what I want to say without you interrupt. So we must follow society's. We must follow society's rules, assuming they do not violate moral principles. Because the society has a right to self-governance.
I'm asking you a question about
the burden is on us to follow those rules.
I'm asking you about your moral principles.
Matter.
Yeah, I'm
Their
asking
rules
you
do
about
matter.
your moral principles.
It's only in cases where they do
head,
violate the moral
look at
principles
the list of your
where
moral
we
principles,
can
and I want
sort
you
of
to
set
tell
aside
me,
society's decision. So
I want you to look at your.
There is no claim here being made by me. There's no implication or logical entailment that society's rules don't matter.
Yeah, so...
Do you acknowledge that?
I want you to look at your list of moral principles right now, and I want you to tell me whether or not it is wrong to violate another person's consent when they have not violated another person's consent. Is that wrong? Yes or no? Does that go against your rules? You there? We having technical difficulties here?
Oh, I cut out there for a minute. What'd you say?
My question was that I want you to look at your moral principles, look at the list of your moral principles, and I want you to tell me whether or not it is right to violate another person's consent when they have not violated another person's consent. Is that wrong?
It is in cases. It is okay to violate their consent in cases where they're
And not in
committing
some
an act
cases,
which
it's either
violates.
it is or it's not right.
Well, no, that's not the. It's okay in some cases, but
Well, it's
not all
okay to
cases.
rape in some cases.
No, it's not okay to rape in.
Okay, so so you believe that's either right to rape or it's not right to rape.
Yeah, when we're talking about rape, yeah,
Yeah.
it's never
So when
okay
it comes to
rape.
consent, you can either think it's right to violate another person's consent when they have not violated another person's consent, or you could think that it's not wrong, right?
Right. In cases where someone's doing something wrong, they're committing a wrongful act, it's okay to violate their consent.
Yeah, so if they violated, yeah, I agree. If they violate another person's consent, then yeah, you can violate their consent. But I'm asking you when they have not violated another consent.
Right. In the case of them committing a wrongful act, it's okay to violate their consent.
When they have not violated another person's consent?
Yeah, even if they haven't violated someone else's consent, it is okay to violate someone's consent
So it
in
is
the case
okay.
of them
So
committing
yes,
a
it is
wrongful
okay.
act.
Yes, so it is okay.
If they're committing a wrongful act,
There
yes,
is no
it's
if.
okay.
There is no nothing else. It's
There
either
is an
it
if.
is
That's
okay
my
or it is
answer
not
does
okay. Is
clearly
it okay to
include
rape
this
somebody
if.
or is it not okay to rape someone?
No, it's not okay to rape people.
Okay, is it okay to violate another person's consent when they have not violated another person's consent, or is it wrong? Not wrong.
If they're committing a wrongful act, it is okay to violate their consent.
So who determines that? Society?
Well, again, it would depend on the circumstances. If
So
we're
what
talking
is a
about rape,
wrongful
like
act?
a wrongful act would, in some, like for when we're talking about violating the rules of society, the rules which do not violate moral principles, it is a wrongful act to violate those rules. To violate the rules society has come together under their right to self-governance and put these rules in place. If you're violating those rules, you're committing a wrongful act. Assuming the rules do not violate any moral principles derived from reason.
Well, if they don't agree with those moral principles, then their rule doesn't matter.
I don't care if they agree with the, when I say their
If
moral
they make
principles
if let's say the
derived from
government
reason,
were to make
we're
a
not talking
law
about something
that it is okay
subjective.
to murder somebody, then you're saying that it doesn't matter what society thinks. That goes against my moral principles, right?
Murder is wrong tautologically, so you can't
And
have
violating
it be
another person's
okay to
consent
murder.
is wrong tautologically when they have not violated another person's consent.
That tautologically would not be the case.
Yeah, especially
what are you talking about?
Absolutely.
No,
if
wrong
you're not
is
violating another
defined
person's consent, how could you justify violating theirs?
Murder is defined as wrongfully killing someone, so it can't be okay to murder someone.
Violating another person's consent is wrongfully using their body when they have not done anything to you, without their permission.
No, you can violate people's consent. Everyone agrees you can violate someone's consent
when they have
in
not
some
initiated an aggression, when they have not violated another person's
so
consent.
it's not tautological. Okay, do you get the point here though? That
it is
murder
tautological.
Is
You
okay.
either think it's okay to
it's
violate
not.
another person's consent when they have not violated another person's consent, or
you don't know what tautological.
So you do think it's
so we can move on from that, I guess. It's okay if someone's committing a wrongful act to violate their consent.
We're just not going to agree on this.
Well, I mean,
I guess that's the last. It seems like the last top. So you're not going to make any other arguments. You're just going to appeal to the same. It's just the society says so. I don't care what society says, and that's it.
I've literally said.
Well, you believe in these moral principles. It's based on these moral principles.
Right, exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah, so it's not just what society says. Like, I don't know how much more clear I can make it.
Oh, well, then you agree with me. It isn't based off of what society says. It's based off of your moral principles. I thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's all I needed to hear.
Moral principles.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Society's rules cannot be violated in the case of them not violating the moral principles.
That's fine.
Okay, sure.
I'm just doing that. I know. I'm just doing that because I feel like we're at the end of this conversation.
We are. You're right. I get it. I know. I get it.
But all right. Do you want to have any final words or last words?
I don't. If you have a final word, I might have a final word about your word.
I don't know. I guess I'm just gonna rehash what I said. You know, in the end of the day, we own our bodies. It's a scarce resource. We control it. If you have not violated anyone else's consent, I don't think it's right for another person to violate your consent under any circumstance. You know, it doesn't make any sense, because then if you could make that in one situation, then you could justify it pretty much in any situation. And I don't really care what society says. I don't care about self-governance. What I care about is individual property rights and individual liberty. And Capistan is the best. We need to
I would say that we
Capistan.
don't own ourselves. I am myself rather than owning myself. And that in cases of someone committing a wrongful act, yeah, I can violate that person's consent. If you're breaking in my house, I don't need your consent to stop you. If you're kidnapping my daughter, I don't need your consent to stop you. Wrongful acts would nullify whether or not I need to worry about your consent.
All right. Is there anything you else want to talk to me about before we go? Or
No, I think we covered everything, man.
all right. So, is there anything you want to plug on my YouTube channel?
Yeah, everybody join the Ooze server on Discord.
You want me to put the Ooze Discord in my description?
If you wanted to, you could. Yeah, that'd be cool. We can argue with them.
Okay.
You're an NCAP fan.
No problem. Anything else you want to say?
No. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was fun. I know we always get heated, but it's always fun.
I felt like it was a good conversation. Like I said, I try not to interrupt, but like generally, like I don't.
You
mind
say that,
interruptions,
but you do interrupt.
But I don't mind. Generally, I don't mind interruptions. Like I don't mind if you interrupt me or I interrupt you or we talk over each other. It's just like if I say, "Hey, wait, let me say this one thing." I then I try my best to like at least let you say it or allow me to say it. That's all. You know. That's why that was the only one part. That's all. You felt like
I would just say I'm bad about interrupting, and you're bad about it too. We're both bad about it, so I just ignore it and let us both do it.
Yeah,
is how I look at it.
I try not to get butthurt or whatever. You know, I'm not like I don't care. But yeah, I had a good conversation. It was good to have you on the show. I hope to see you next time, man. Have a good night.
Yeah,